Your favorite crab meat pizza has arrived, Mom. Enjoy to your heart's content. As my daughter-in-law places the plate before me, her kindness seems out of character. I can't help but question this abrupt shift. It strikes me that my eldest child and his wife might be orchestrating some scheme, using food as their tool. Their history of hostility and past attempts to deceive me weigh heavily on my mind. The lavishness of this pizza only adds to my skepticism. Their sudden display of kindness feels more like a calculated move than genuine warmth. Trusting them blindly would be naive. It's clear they're plotting something. I refuse to be underestimated. I possess the capability to defend myself and reverse any situation if necessary. My name is Mary, a housewife in her 60s. Since my husband's passing years ago, I've lived alone. Initially, when my eldest child and their spouse proposed I move in with them, I declined. They were newlyweds, and I wanted them to relish that special phase. Nevertheless, they insisted on residing nearby out of concern for my well-being, a gesture for which I was genuinely appreciative. Their frequent visits, despite my reassurances that they needn't feel obligated, were a testament to their caring nature. My eldest child would often express worry, prompting me to relent and indulge their concern. Similarly, my daughter-in-law sought opportunities to foster a bond with me even when my eldest was occupied. I took pride in my child's choice of partner, believing her to be a person of integrity. However, I was oblivious to their ulterior motives at the time, a realization that now vexes me. Reflecting on those moments, I am irked by my own gullibility. Genuine kindness without hidden agendas is a rarity. I allowed myself to be swayed by their eloquent assurances, oblivious to the underlying truth. It wasn't until later that I uncovered their true intentions. One evening, they dropped by and ended up staying overnight, citing a lack of plans for the following day. Though I hesitated to encroach on their time as a couple, suggesting they return home since it was nearby, my daughter-in-law was insistent. "We're eager to strengthen our bond, so we'd like to stay," she asserted. Reluctantly, I acquiesced, offering them the guest room. This house, a creation of my late husband, holds many unused rooms since it's too large for just me. Despite its dustiness, my daughter-in-law graciously assisted in tidying up, showcasing her adeptness at housework and reinforcing my favorable opinion of her. In the quiet of night, I stirred, parched, and made my way to the kitchen. En route, I noticed the living room bathed in light. Intrigued, I peered in, finding them seated on the sofa engaged in conversation. Unable to resist the temptation, I surreptitiously listened in, inadvertently overhearing a dialogue between my eldest child and his wife. "I'm utterly drained," remarked the eldest child. "That old lady has us toiling like slaves, don't you agree?" "Just endure a little longer," the wife countered. "Once we secure Mom's inheritance, we're free. If her husband hadn't been a CEO, we wouldn't be in this predicament. It's astounding how easily she's deceived just because we're cordial to her. Mom's always been emotionally fragile. She'll likely bestow the inheritance upon us." I was dumbfounded by what I overheard. If their words held truth, then their kindness was merely a facade to lay claim to my late husband's estate. Had all their previous gestures been insincere? Every word they uttered to me were family bound to support each other, or so I thought. Why this fixation on the inheritance? I couldn't discern any financial troubles on his part, but perhaps he's entangled in dire straits unbeknownst to me. What drives them to such lengths for an inheritance? Is it solely for monetary gain? The behavior of the couple left me pondering, perplexed by their motives. I resolved to confront them about their recent conduct. Through inquiries within the neighborhood and among acquaintances, a startling revelation surfaced. Both of them were deeply entrenched in gambling, having accumulated an overwhelming debt far beyond their means to repay through conventional employment. It dawned on me why they were so desperate for the inheritance. My late husband had bequeathed a substantial portion to our eldest child, albeit less than what I received, yet still a sizable sum. They had recklessly squandered it, plunging into insurmountable debt. Their kindness, it seemed, was merely a guise to secure the inheritance from me. Following this discovery, I grew wary of their intentions. "Do you require any assistance, Mom? We're here to lend a hand," my daughter-in-law inquired, her words ringing hollow in light of the unsettling truth. "Your favorite crab meat pizza is here," my daughter-in-law announced cheerfully as she placed the plate before me. "Mom, eat as much as you want." Her sudden kindness struck me as odd. I couldn't help but question this abrupt change. Suspicions gnawed at me. It seemed my eldest child and his wife were orchestrating something, perhaps using food as a guise. They had a history of hostility and deceptive acts, so their newfound warmth raised red flags. It was clear to me that something wasn't right with this extravagant pizza. Their niceness felt contrived, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they were up to something. I refused to be underestimated. Despite being a housewife in my 60s, living alone since my husband's passing, I was not without my own strength. When my husband died, my eldest child and their spouse had offered for me to move in with them. However, I declined, wanting them to cherish their newlywed bliss. Yet they insisted on living nearby out of concern for me, a gesture I initially appreciated. Their frequent visits, despite my reassurances that they needed to feel obligated, only fueled my suspicions. But it wasn't until one fateful night that my doubts were confirmed. They stayed over, claiming they had no plans for the next day. I suggested they return home since it was close by, but my daughter-in-law insisted they stay to deepen our relationship. Reluctantly, I agreed, offering them the guest room. In the dead of night, I caught them conversing in the living room. What I overheard shattered any remaining trust I had in them. They spoke callously about me, about their plans to secure my late husband's inheritance. They had squandered their own fortune on gambling debts, leaving them desperate for money. Their kindness towards me was a ruse, a means to an end. From that moment on, I kept my guard up. When my daughter-in-law extended hollow offers of help, I politely declined, wary of their true intentions. Their subsequent attempt to confront me about a supposed new love interest only reinforced my skepticism. Their concern was a thinly veiled attempt to maintain control over my finances, and I refused to be manipulated any longer. I could see right through her facade. It was clear she was only concerned about protecting her inheritance. Yet my daughter-in-law continued to play the role of the caring daughter-in-law, never revealing her true intentions. That's acceptable for now, I thought. The true nature of my eldest child and their spouse will be revealed in due time. All witness their true selves when the moment is right. And that moment arrived sooner than anticipated. "Happy birthday, Mom," exclaimed my eldest child, presenting me with a bag from a fancy pizza establishment. Inside were an array of pizzas, including my beloved crab meat pizza. "Thank you, but let me handle these," I insisted, prepared to start plating them. "No, Mom, today's your day. Sit back and relax. I'll take care of it," declared my daughter-in-law. She whisked the bag away to the kitchen. My eldest child followed suit, offering assistance. Despite their seemingly genuine efforts to celebrate my birthday, I remained wary. Something was amiss. As I contemplated their motives, they returned with plates in hand. Before me sat a steaming slice of crab meat pizza. "Here's your favorite, Mom. Enjoy," my eldest child affirmed, echoing their spouse's sentiments. To an outsider, it might have seemed like a joyous birthday celebration, but I knew better. There had to be something sinister lurking on that plate. I refused to be fooled. Their excessive kindness raised suspicions that couldn't be ignored. With my husband no longer by my side, I understood the importance of protecting myself. I vowed never to place my trust in them again. They would soon rue the day they attempted to deceive me. "Well, it certainly appears appetizing, but my tastes have evolved recently. I find myself drawn to the foie gras on your plate," I remarked, reaching for my eldest child's dish. They tried to intervene, but I feigned ignorance, questioning, "Is there a problem? You know, I've developed a newfound appreciation for foie gras. And if memory serves, you used to enjoy crab meat too, didn't you?" I suggested we share both dishes, observing the sudden pallor that washed over my eldest child's face. It was evident that they had schemed to manipulate me by tampering with my favorite pizza. Their reluctance to indulge confirmed my suspicions. "But it looks so tantalizing. Won't you have a taste?" I prodded, watching as their facade crumbled under the weight of their deceit. With resolve, I reached for a slice of the crab meat pizza and offered it to my eldest child. Reluctantly, they took a bite, their expression tense as if anticipating the aftermath. Daughter-in-law glanced at them, her concern evident in the pallor of their face. "You seem a bit off color. Perhaps the pizza didn't agree with you, Mom," she suggested, her voice tinged with apprehension. "Considering how your husband is feeling, maybe it's best to call it a night and prepare something different," she added, her panic palpable. Sensing daughter-in-law's desperation to end the meal, I countered, "But your son doesn't appear well either. It's safer for you to stay the night." Despite her attempts to deflect, insisting they leave, her words faltered, betraying her desire to depart. It was clear she was eager to make a swift exit. I always thought that for a couple attempting to deceive others, they're remarkably inept liars. They unravel at the slightest hint of unpredictability. I mused to myself as I observed my eldest child. Suddenly, something peculiar occurred. After a few moments, with a resounding thud, they collapsed to the ground. As I approached, I realized they were deeply asleep, likely drugged with a sleeping pill. Oh, couldn't keep your eyes open, could you? Must have been exhausted, I remarked, tilting my head in feigned innocence. Daughter-in-law's frustration boiled over. Enough. Why won't things go according to plan? Today was supposed to be crucial, she exclaimed, slapping my eldest child's cheek in a futile attempt to rouse them. But they remained unconscious, oblivious to her distress. I stood in stunned silence as daughter-in-law's facade crumbled before my eyes. Disregarding my presence, she began to confess. I had been pretending to be the dutiful daughter-in-law, all in hopes of securing the inheritance to clear our debts. Today was meant to be the final step. We planned to incapacitate you and steal your banking card. But nothing went as planned. It's your fault, she accused, her glare piercing. Their scheme to drug me and steal my banking card under the guise of a birthday celebration was truly deplorable. I couldn't stoop to their level, so I decided to confront them head-on. I've known all along that your kindness was just a front to get to my money. That's why I kept my distance and declined your offer of pizza, I revealed, watching as daughter-in-law's expression shifted from shock to disbelief. It was clear she had underestimated my awareness of their deceit. How foolish they must feel for thinking they could deceive me so easily. Sorry to burst your bubble, but I'm not as naive as you both seem to think, I continued, a hint of scorn in my voice. Your sudden displays of kindness always struck me as suspicious, and I even overheard your conversation about the inheritance when I stayed over, discussing your plans in the target's own home. That's just plain foolish. Don't label us as fools. We've been doing our best, daughter-in-law retorted defensively. If this is your best effort, then it's no wonder you're drowning in debt, I countered sharply, watching as daughter-in-law's expression shifted with discomfort at the mention of the word debt. And you know about the debt too. How much do you know? It was evident that daughter-in-law hadn't anticipated my knowledge of their financial woes. Her anxiety was palpable at the mention of their debt. I did some digging and discovered the extent of your gambling debts. It was quite a shock to find out. You've managed to accumulate quite a substantial debt, I stated matter-of-factly, noting the growing pallor of daughter-in-law's face. She must have realized there was no escaping the truth. Mom, I'm truly sorry. Please forgive us. We're struggling to make ends meet. Can you lend us some money? We'll repay you, daughter-in-law pleaded earnestly, her once confident demeanor now replaced with desperation. Even in her distress, she continued to seek financial assistance. It was disheartening to realize that, to her, I was merely seen as a convenient source of support. I'm sorry, but I won't be giving you a single cent. I can't trust individuals like you to fulfill your promises, I responded firmly, refusing to yield to her pleas. You need to take responsibility for your actions. Daughter-in-law's demeanor shifted to one of resignation at my words. Though visibly disheartened, she seemed to comprehend my unwavering stance and refrained from asking for money again. Following that confrontation, my interactions with my eldest son and daughter-in-law gradually waned. They ceased visiting, barely maintaining any communication. Surprisingly, when those days arrived, I didn't experience loneliness as I had expected. Instead, I felt a sense of liberation, free from the shackles of deceit. Eventually, my eldest child and daughter-in-law relocated. According to neighbors, they were escorted away by dubious individuals, likely unable to settle their debts and forced to flee to a distant state. Perhaps they now endure harrowing circumstances, plagued by the consequences of their actions. Yet such matters are no longer my concern. We are estranged, our ties severed. I bid farewell to this tumultuous chapter, confiding in my late husband's photograph. His expression seemed to exude a sense of relief, as if acknowledging the closure of a fraught period. My sole family now resides in the memory of my late husband, the one who steadfastly stood by me. The life is fleeting. I am determined to embrace it with strength, cherishing the cherished moments shared with my husband.
When the lawyer read my late uncle's will, my brother, greedy as ever, grabbed the $150,000 without blinking. All I got was an old, dusty toolbox. He laughed, thinking he won. But when I opened that toolbox, his smile disappeared because inside was something that changed everything. I've always believed that people leave behind more than just things when they pass. They leave behind pieces of themselves. My name is Maya Brooks, and this story begins the day I walked into a quiet law office in Asheville, North Carolina, after losing the only father figure I had left in my life, my Uncle Walter. I was 34 at the time, living a steady life as a local history teacher, deeply rooted in the very streets and stories of Asheville. I didn't have much in the way of glamour, but I had purpose. I had peace.
Until that day.
My brother Ethan showed up 10 minutes late, of course. That was just like him. 36, successful, sharp-suited, and always in a hurry. He'd flown in from New York City, where he worked as some high-powered marketing executive. We couldn't have been more different. Ethan chased wealth and prestige. I stayed behind, choosing to help care for Uncle Walter, even when it wasn't easy. I always believed love was measured by time, not money. When Ethan entered Mr. Reynolds' office, he barely looked at me. "Maya," he said, more like a greeting to a stranger than his sister. I gave him a small nod. I was used to the cold between us. Ever since he left Asheville, we'd drifted, our lives moving in opposite directions. I stayed grounded. He kept climbing. Mr. Reynolds, our uncle's longtime lawyer, cleared his throat and gestured for us to sit. "Thank you both for coming. I know this is a difficult time. Your uncle left behind two main assets. One, a savings account with $150,000, and two, the apartment he lived in, along with its contents." Ethan's reaction was immediate. "I'll take the money," he said, casually, like he was picking an item off a menu. I glanced at him. "You don't even want to hear the rest? There's nothing else to hear. That place is falling apart. You want it? Be my guest." Mr. Reynolds raised a brow. "Actually, Walter didn't assign who gets what. He wanted the two of you to decide."
Of course he did.
Uncle Walter never liked forcing choices. He believed in letting people show who they were. Ethan showed his hand instantly. The money. That's all he wanted. "I'll take the apartment," I said quietly. I didn't even need to think about it. That place was more than peeling wallpaper and creaky floors. It was memories. It was home. As we stood to leave, Mr. Reynolds reached into his drawer and handed me something. "Your uncle left this for you specifically." It was a small, worn-out leather keychain. Faded, but still holding a tiny brass tag. Storage C. He didn't say what it opened. Mr. Reynolds shook his head. "Only that it was important. For your hands only." I slipped it into my coat pocket, unsure what it meant, but already feeling a sense of responsibility. 2 days later, I unlocked the apartment. Everything was just as he left it. Books stacked by the fireplace, his old flannel coat draped over a chair, the framed photo of my parents on the hallway wall. It smelled faintly of cedar and tobacco, the kind of smell you only notice when it's gone. I wandered through each room, touching objects like they were sacred. The creak of the floorboards, the chipped edges of furniture, even the light filtering through the dusty blinds, it all felt like pieces of him. I remembered the keychain and started searching. At the back of the bedroom closet, behind boxes and coats, I found a narrow metal cabinet labeled Storage C. I turned the key, and with a soft click, it opened. Inside was a wooden toolbox. Not the kind used for wrenches and nails, but something older, heavier. When I lifted the lid, my breath caught. There were neatly wrapped journals, a stack of vintage postcards tied with twine, and small tokens, some round like old coins, others square and etched with names of towns. There were also hand-drawn sketches of buildings I recognized from around Asheville, some gone, others barely hanging on. I sat on the carpet and opened one of the journals. My uncle's handwriting filled the pages. Observations, dates, memories, details about buildings, shops, people, and places that time had forgotten. At the top of one page, he had written, "If we don't remember where we came from, how can we know where we're going?" I closed the journal slowly, overwhelmed by emotion. He hadn't just been collecting these things, he'd been preserving them, documenting a living history.
For me.
Later that evening, I walked next door and knocked on Mrs. Langford's door. She was in her 70s, retired, and had lived in the building longer than anyone else. She used to bake us cookies when we were kids and help watch over me when Uncle Walter worked nights. "Oh, Maya," she said, pulling me into a warm hug. "It's been too long. I found something," I told her and showed her one of the tokens and a postcard. Her eyes softened with recognition.
"He talked about these,"
said. Every token held a piece of a story. He used to say Asheville's soul was hidden in attics and basements. "He never told me about it," I admitted. "He was saving it for the right time," she said with a smile. "And for the right person." That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the toolbox, about Uncle Walter's silent mission. I'd always loved history, but this was different. This was personal. He hadn't just given me an apartment. He'd left me a calling. I knew then I couldn't let it sit in a closet. These journals, these tokens, they needed to be seen, read, understood. People needed to know the stories they held. And maybe, just maybe, this old apartment could become something more. Of course, I had no idea what was coming next. Ethan had walked away without a second thought, but the past has a way of creeping back in. And his story with this place wasn't finished yet. Not by a long shot.
I didn't sleep much after that night.
My mind was racing with possibilities, questions, and a strange mixture of excitement and fear. The journals, tokens, and postcards filled my thoughts like puzzle pieces. Uncle Walter had left behind something far greater than anyone realized, not just family memories, but the kind of legacy that could breathe life into the history of Asheville. It felt like he was guiding me, even in his absence. The next few days, I spent every free moment inside the apartment. I cleaned the dust from shelves, sorted through closets filled with old coats and boxes, and kept going back to the toolbox. Each journal I opened revealed more stories, some about the city, others about our family, even childhood memories of me and Ethan. One journal in particular had an entry about a small bakery that used to sit on Lexington Avenue. He'd written about the owner, how he used to give cookies to kids after school. That was the kind of detail you didn't find in history books. That was the heart of a place. It became clear to me that the apartment itself could be something more than just a place to live. I wanted to turn it into a kind of community exhibit, a living memory space. Something simple, maybe call it Heritage Loft. A place where people could come in, look through the collection, and remember what Asheville used to be. It wouldn't be fancy, just real. But I had no idea where to start. That's when I thought of Greg Martinez. He owned a local antique restoration shop, and he'd been a good friend of Uncle Walter's for years. I hadn't seen him since the funeral, but I remembered how kind he'd been. I walked into his shop one afternoon with a few of the tokens and sketches in hand. The smell of wood polish and old leather filled the air, and he looked up from behind a workbench, smiling in recognition. "Maya," he said, standing to greet me. "Haven't seen you since, well, you know." "I know. It's been a lot," I admitted. "I found something. Actually, I found a lot of somethings." I showed him a few of the sketches and told him what I wanted to do with the apartment. Greg listened carefully, nodding, his eyes wide with interest. "Your uncle always had an eye for detail," he said. "He talked about this idea once, you know? Turning his place into something like a museum. He said people were forgetting too much." "He never told me," I said, a little surprised. "He probably thought it wasn't time yet. But if you're ready to take it on, I'd love to help." His words meant more than I could say. Over the next few weeks, Greg helped me clean, fix, and slowly transform the apartment. He repaired the squeaky floorboards, restored some of the old furniture, and even built display shelves for the journals and items. I found comfort in the work and in the people who came by to offer support once word got around. Mrs. Langford brought in a few things of her own, photos, old newspaper clippings, even a hand-painted street map from the 1940s. Soon, others started donating small keepsakes, and before I knew it, Heritage Loft was starting to take shape. I wasn't doing it for attention, but the attention found me anyway. It started small. A local journalist visited, then a teacher brought her class. Visitors left handwritten notes about how much the place reminded them of their grandparents or childhood homes. One woman cried when she found a photo of a building her father once worked in. I didn't expect it to grow the way it did, but it warmed my heart to see people care. And then, of course, Ethan called. I hadn't heard from him since the day he took the money and left town. But now, suddenly, he wanted to talk. So, he said on the phone, his voice calm but tight, I've been hearing things about the apartment. I kept my tone even. You mean Heritage Loft? Heritage what? It's what I've been working on. I turned the apartment into a community space. For people to learn about the history, see the things Uncle Walter collected. There was a pause on the line. Then he asked, Are you making money off it? I closed my eyes, already knowing where this was headed. Not really. It's donation-based. Some people give what they can. Most of it goes back into repairs and upkeep. But it's getting attention, right? Media, schools, stuff like that. Yes, I admitted. He laughed once, short and bitter. Well, I hope you're planning to split that with me. You took your share, I said firmly. You wanted the money. I kept what you didn't want. And now it's worth something.
No, Ethan.
Now it means something. He didn't like that. I could hear it in the silence. Look, he said finally, I think we should talk in person. I don't think that's necessary. He hung up without another word. After that call, I couldn't shake the feeling in my chest, like a shadow creeping over everything I had built. A few days passed quietly, but then one morning, I came to the apartment and found the front window cracked, a small display table knocked over. A couple of old tokens had gone missing. At first, I thought it was just kids messing around, but the more I looked, the more it felt intentional. Someone had forced the lock, rummaged through the shelves. Nothing valuable was taken, not in the usual sense. Just enough to leave a message. Greg came over after I called him, and we went through everything together. This wasn't random, he said. Whoever did this knew where to look. Do you think it was Ethan? I asked, afraid to hear the answer. I don't know, but maybe you should start keeping records. Security cameras, too. I nodded slowly. I hated the idea, but he was right. A few days later, Mr. Reynolds called. Maya, he said, you need to come to my office. Something's come up. When I arrived, he looked serious. A private investigator I work with found something. Surveillance footage. It shows someone breaking into the apartment the night before the damage. We got a clear shot of the license plate. And it's registered to a man from out of town. He's known to do freelance work, dirty work, and we have strong reason to believe Ethan hired him. I sat there, stunned. He wanted to scare you, Mr. Reynolds continued. Maybe force you to shut down the project or sell the place. My stomach turned. It was one thing to argue over money. It was another to try to destroy something so personal, so meaningful. He didn't just want to cut. He wanted to erase everything I was building. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about inheritance. It never was. This was about legacy, and some people would rather burn it down than let someone else protect it. It's strange how people can look you in the eye and still plan your downfall behind your back, especially when that person is your own brother. After Mr. Reynolds told me what the investigator had found, I just sat there in silence, feeling like something had shattered deep inside me. The man who broke into the apartment had been hired. Hired. I didn't want to believe it. But everything made sense now. The way the lock had been forced, how only meaningful items were disturbed. It was calculated. It wasn't about theft. It was a warning. Do we have proof? I asked quietly. We have the footage, the man's confession, and a paper trail linking a payment to Ethan's account, Mr. Reynolds said. It's strong enough for a legal case. I didn't even know how to feel. Angry? Betrayed? Hurt? All of it was tangled together inside me. I had spent weeks building something beautiful out of love and memory, and Ethan had tried to destroy it for what? Because he thought he was owed more? I walked back to the apartment that day with heavy steps. When I opened the door, the familiar scent of old books and polished wood greeted me, but it didn't feel warm. It felt violated. The cracks in the glass, the disturbed shelves, the missing items, it was like someone had tried to tear away part of Uncle Walter's soul. Greg showed up a few minutes later, his arms full of new tools and a determined look on his face. We're fixing everything, he said simply, and we're making it stronger. He installed a proper alarm system and added reinforced locks. We bought a camera to monitor the entrance and windows. Mrs. Langford brought over a new display case, and even some local students volunteered to help recatalog the items. It wasn't just about security anymore, it was about reclaiming the space. About not letting fear take away what mattered. One afternoon, while I was reorganizing a few postcards, a couple walked in. They had driven in from Charlotte after reading about Heritage Loft in a blog post. "I used to live in this building when I was a kid," the man said, walking around with misty eyes. "This brings back everything." Moments like that reminded me why I was doing this. It wasn't just for Uncle Walter. It was for the people who still cared about where they came from, for the stories left behind in dusty corners. But as the days passed, I kept wondering what Ethan would do next. I hadn't heard from him since the break-in. Maybe he thought I wouldn't find out. Maybe he thought I'd be too scared to fight back. But he underestimated me. Mr. Reynolds moved quickly. A formal complaint was filed. The man Ethan hired had already agreed to testify. The case would go to trial within weeks. The charges? Conspiracy, vandalism, and property damage. Ethan tried to reach out. He called once, left a message that said, "You're blowing this out of proportion." I didn't call him back. There was nothing left to say. The trial was short, but intense. I sat quietly in the courtroom, dressed in simple clothes, watching as Ethan was brought in by his lawyer. He didn't look at me until the evidence started rolling in. Photos of the damage, footage of the hired man entering the apartment, and finally, bank statements linking the payment to Ethan's account. He looked pale, thinner than I remembered. Maybe guilt had caught up to him, or maybe it was just fear. When the hired man testified, describing how he was paid to mess the place up enough to scare her into shutting it down, I saw Ethan lower his head. The judge didn't take long. The final sentence was 7 years in prison and a $300,000 fine for damages and emotional harm. I should have felt satisfied. Justice was served, wasn't it? But as I watched Ethan being led away in handcuffs, all I felt was a deep, quiet sadness. He was my brother. We shared childhood memories, bedtime stories, laughter in this very apartment. Somewhere along the way, he had let ambition and greed blind him to all of that. And now it had cost him everything. After the trial, I returned to Heritage Loft and sat alone in the quiet. I picked up one of Uncle Walter's journals and flipped through a few pages. One entry caught my eye. It was written in the year I turned 10. Maya has a gentle heart. She notices things others miss. She listens. She remembers. I hope someday she finds what she's meant to do with those gifts. Tears welled in my eyes. He had seen this in me long before I had. Maybe this, preserving history, honoring voices, connecting the past to the present, maybe this was what I was meant to do all along. Word of the trial and Heritage Loft's story spread quickly. Local media picked it up, then regional outlets. Suddenly, we were getting calls from schools, authors, even travel bloggers. One weekend, a well-known historical society visited and offered to help with funding and preservation efforts. Greg and I expanded the displays, added guided tours, and even held weekend workshops on old map reading, letter writing, and preserving family heirlooms. People brought their own items and stories, hoping to contribute. It was beautiful. It was alive. Mrs. Langford became our unofficial greeter, sitting by the front with tea and a notebook. Greg fixed things before they even broke. And I woke up every day feeling like I had a purpose. But the betrayal still lingered in my chest like a bruise. Some nights I'd sit by the window and wonder what Ethan was doing. If he regretted it. If he missed anything about this place, about us. I didn't know. And maybe I never would. One evening, as I was closing up, I found a small envelope slid under the door. No name, no return address. Inside was one of the missing tokens, one that had vanished during the break-in. It was clean, carefully wrapped, almost like someone wanted me to know they hadn't forgotten. I didn't tell anyone. I just put the token back in its place. Heritage Loft wasn't just surviving. It was becoming a symbol, a place where people came to remember and maybe even heal. And yet, something told me the story wasn't over. Not entirely. Life didn't return to normal after the trial. It became something new. Something deeper. Heritage Loft was no longer just a project or a tribute. It had grown into a place where memories found a voice, where strangers became friends, and where the past walked alongside the present. Every room, every shelf, every carefully displayed token held a story. And I, somehow, had become the keeper of them all. In the months following Ethan's sentencing, the support from the community was overwhelming. Volunteers came forward to help with events. School groups made regular visits. We hosted our first story day, where visitors could bring old letters, photos, or heirlooms and share the stories behind them. Some were funny, some heartbreaking, but all were valuable. I remember one man bringing an rusted harmonica that once belonged to his grandfather, a jazz musician in the 1930s. He played a note on it, and the entire room fell silent. That's when I realized this was more than a museum. It was a living heartbeat of shared memory. Greg had become my right hand. He was there for every repair, every idea, every quiet moment when I needed a friend. We didn't talk much about Ethan. There wasn't much to say. But his absence lingered in the corners of the apartment, especially at night when the rooms grew still. I often wondered if he thought about this place, if he felt remorse, or if the bitterness still ate at him. Then came the letter. It arrived 6 months after the sentencing, addressed to me in Ethan's handwriting. I sat alone in the yellow armchair, Uncle Walter's favorite, and carefully opened the envelope. The first line read, "I don't expect you to forgive me." He wrote that prison had forced him to stop running for the first time in years. He had been alone with his thoughts, with his guilt, and with memories of our childhood that he'd tried to bury under ambition. He didn't defend what he did. He didn't make excuses. He just told the truth. "I saw you building something out of love and history, and it scared me," he wrote, "because I realized I had nothing like that. All my success that felt hollow. And you, with that broken-down apartment and old books, had more peace than I ever did." I sat there a long time, just staring at the paper. He ended the letter by saying he hoped, someday, he could visit Heritage Loft, not as its co-heir, but as a student, ready to learn what he'd missed. I didn't cry. I just felt still. The next day, I shared the letter with Mrs. Langford and Greg. "That's something," Greg said softly. "He didn't have to write that." "No," I said, folding the letter carefully. "But I'm glad he did." Life moved forward, slowly but steadily. Heritage Loft became more than just local. It was featured in a national magazine about community-led preservation. A small grant came in to help fund a digital archive. We hired 2 part-time assistants to help manage the growing collection. I began to see the apartment not as a place to hold on to the past, but as a place that helped people understand it. And through that understanding, they found meaning in their own lives. The legacy Uncle Walter left behind wasn't just in journals and tokens. It was in the values he planted in me. Respect, memory, purpose. One evening, after everyone had gone, I sat in the yellow armchair again, reading one of the last journals I hadn't yet touched. Inside was a note written on a folded piece of paper, separate from the pages. "Maya, if you've made it this far, then I know you've found what you were meant to find. Thank you for seeing the worth in what others overlooked." My breath caught. He had known, all along. I looked around the room, at the old photographs, the softly glowing lamps, the shelves full of voices long past, and I felt a peace settle in my chest. This was home. Not just for me, but for everyone who walked through that door carrying a piece of their history. The night ended quietly, with the streetlights casting long shadows through the windows. I locked up, turned out the lights, and whispered a soft goodnight to the apartment. Some stories end with a final word. Mine didn't. Because the thing about legacy is it lives on. In the hands that protect it, in the hearts that believe in it, and in the silence between the pages, where love waits to be remembered. While I was away on a business trip, I trusted my family to care for my 10-year-old son. Then I got a panicked call. "Mom, they left me. They just drove away. The house is locked." When I called them, they laughed and hung up. I cut them off financially and called the police, but what they found when they arrived left me absolutely speechless. I never imagined that my own family would betray me like this. I had always believed that no matter what, blood ties meant something. That was my first mistake. For years, I had been the one holding my family together. My mother, Eleanor, was never an easy woman. She had a way of making me feel like, no matter what I did, it wasn't enough. She never worked a day in her life after my father passed away. She had convinced herself that as her daughter, it was my duty to take care of her. And I did. I paid for her mortgage, her car, even the ridiculous shopping sprees she claimed were necessary for her happiness. Then there was my brother, Eric. He was always the reckless one. From the time we were kids, he was the one getting into trouble, always finding a way to charm his way out of it. As an adult, he was no different. Except now, instead of school fights and pranks, he was knee-deep in gambling debts and shady business deals. I lost count of how many times I bailed him out. Every time he swore, it would be the last. Every time he lied. At first, I didn't mind helping. I was successful. As a criminal defense attorney in Atlanta, I made more than enough to support my husband, my son, and unfortunately, the two parasites that shared my blood. My husband, Jacob, often warned me, "Olivia, they'll take as much as you give," he would say. He had a way of seeing things clearly, something I struggled with when it came to my family. But Jacob was always working, always away on assignments for his civil engineering firm, so it was easy to ignore his advice. And then there was Noah, my sweet, 10-year-old boy. The only thing in my life that truly made sense. He was smart, kind, and loved soccer more than anything. He looked up to his cousin, Ryan, my brother's son. For years, Ryan had been like a big brother to him. But as time went on, something changed. Ryan stopped visiting. He ignored Noah's texts. I didn't understand why, until I saw how Eric and my mother talked about me. I was nothing more than a bank to them, a wallet they could tap into whenever they pleased. The final straw came when Eric called me one evening, his voice desperate. "Liv, I just need a little more. 50,000, that's it. It's a business investment, guaranteed return." I laughed bitterly. Last time it was 20,000. Before that, 10. "I'm done, Eric." Silence. Then, in a tone colder than I had ever heard from him, he said, "You'll regret this." At the time, I brushed it off. It wasn't the first time he had tried to guilt-trip me. I had no idea what was coming. A week later, a big trial kept me in court late. It was a high-profile case, one that could define my career. I had no choice but to leave Noah with my mother. She had watched him before. I didn't think twice. That evening, my phone rang. It was Noah. His voice was shaking. "Mom, they left. Grandma, Uncle Eric, and Ryan. They just drove away." I froze. "What do you mean they left?" "They packed their bags, got in the car, and left." "I can't get inside, Mom. The door is locked." A cold dread settled over me. I grabbed my car keys, my hands shaking. "Stay right there, baby. I'm on my way." I called my mother. Straight to voicemail. Eric, the same. By the time I reached the house, Noah was sitting on the porch, his face pale. He ran into my arms the second he saw me. I could feel his little body trembling. "It was like they didn't even care, Mom," he whispered. I pulled back and cupped his face. "Did they say anything? Anything at all?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Grandma said you'd learn your lesson." The words cut through me like a knife. I should have seen this coming. This wasn't about Noah. This was about me. My refusal to keep feeding them. My refusal to be their personal ATM. They wanted to teach me a lesson. They thought I would crawl back, apologize, beg them to return. They didn't know me at all. The next thing I did was call the police. I could barely hear the dispatcher over the pounding of my heart. My 10-year-old son was abandoned by his guardian. "I need officers here immediately." When the officers arrived, I explained everything. They took my statement, took Noah's. Then they checked the security cameras. I hadn't even thought about them, but now, watching the footage, my blood ran cold. The video showed them laughing as they drove away. Not rushed. Not panicked. They were smiling. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just manipulation. This was cruelty. The officers told me they would investigate, but I already knew what needed to be done. I wasn't just going to cut them off financially. I was going to make sure they paid for what they did. By the time we got home, Noah was exhausted. I tucked him into bed, running my fingers through his hair. I promise you, I whispered, they'll never hurt you again. I walked into my office and opened my laptop. First, I called the bank. All automatic transfers to my mother and brother? Cancelled. Their credit cards? Frozen. Their rent payments?
Gone.
Then I called my firm's private investigator. I want everything on my mother and brother. I want to know where they are, who they're talking to, and most importantly, what they're hiding. I already knew Eric had his hands in something illegal. He was reckless. He thought he was untouchable. He had just given me the perfect excuse to tear him apart. The next morning, I walked into my office, where my assistant, Danielle, looked up from her desk. "Miss Bennett," she said hesitantly, "your mother has called 5 times. Your brother, too." I smiled coldly. Log the calls. I don't need to hear their excuses. I had been kind for too long. They wanted a lesson? They were about to get one. The calls kept coming. My phone buzzed relentlessly. My mother, my brother, even unknown numbers I suspected were them, using different phones. I ignored every single one. I could imagine their growing panic, their desperation to get through to me, but they had made their choice. Now they would face the consequences. I knew they weren't calling out of regret or guilt. No, they were calling because for the first time in years, I had cut them off completely. No more money, no more bailouts, no more safety net. And they were drowning. At work, I buried myself in my cases. It was easier than thinking about the betrayal, easier than reliving Noah's terrified voice on the phone. My assistant, Danielle, kept me updated on the investigation I had started. She didn't ask questions, just handed me updates in quiet understanding. 3 days after I cut them off, Danielle walked into my office, her expression unreadable. She placed a thin folder on my desk. "It's about Eric," she said. I opened the file, scanning the contents. My suspicions were correct. Eric had been involved in a series of illegal business deals. Fraud, money laundering, unpaid debts to some very dangerous people. He was in deep trouble, deeper than even I had imagined. And my mother? She knew. She had known all along. The investigator had found multiple bank transactions linking her to Eric's schemes. She wasn't just enabling him. She was part of it. I leaned back in my chair, gripping the arms of it tightly. My own mother had chosen him. She had chosen a criminal, a liar, a gambler over her own daughter and grandson. And when I refused to be their puppet, she had helped him hurt my child. That realization lit something inside me. Not just anger, fury. That evening, I sat Noah down at the dinner table. His eyes still held a trace of sadness, but I could tell he was trying to move forward. I reached across the table and took his hand. "Noah, I want you to know something," I said. "What happened will never happen again. I promise." He looked up at me, searching my face. "Are they coming back?" I shook my head.
No, sweetheart.
Not this time. After Noah went to bed, I picked up my phone. It was time to act. I called an old friend, Detective Mark Simmons, someone I had worked with in my early years as a defense attorney. He answered after 2 rings. "Olivia Bennett," he said, his voice carrying a hint of amusement. "It's been a while. What can I do for you?" "I have a situation," I said, getting straight to the point. "A case involving fraud, money laundering, and child neglect." There was a brief pause. "Tell me everything." And I did. I laid it all out. Eric's debts, my mother's involvement, and most importantly, how they had abandoned Noah. When I finished, there was silence on the other end of the line. Then Mark said, "I'll see what I can do." The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. The second I picked up, I heard Eric's voice. "Olivia, we need to talk." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Now you want to talk? After what you did?"
He sighed.
"You don't understand, okay? Things got complicated." I felt my jaw tighten. "You abandoned my son. You left him alone and locked out of the house. Explain to me how that's complicated." A pause. Then, "It wasn't my idea. It was Mom's. She said you'd cave if we did this." I felt something snap inside me. So, you went along with it? You don't get it, he said, his voice suddenly desperate. I owe money, Liv. A lot of money. Dangerous people. I needed your help. I exhaled slowly, steadying my voice. And instead of asking like a decent human being, you tried to manipulate me. You used Noah. I had no choice. There's always a choice. Before he could respond, I said, you should probably answer your door. There was silence. Then, in the background, I heard loud knocking. What the? Let me guess. Police? I smiled as I heard the shouting, the commotion. Then, the sound of handcuffs clicking. Olivia. Eric's voice turned frantic. What did you do? I spoke calmly. I did what I should have done a long time ago. I hung up. For the first time in years, I felt light. Later that evening, I got a call from Mark. It's done, he said. Eric's in custody. Charges include fraud, money laundering, and outstanding debts to criminal enterprises. He's looking at a long time behind bars. I nodded, gripping my phone tighter. And my mother? She wasn't home, but we'll find her. I already knew where she was. The investigator had tracked her to a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, hiding, waiting, hoping I'd come running. She still thought I would forgive her. She was wrong. That night, Noah and I sat in the living room, watching one of his favorite soccer games on replay. He curled up beside me, and I ran my fingers through his hair. Mom, he asked softly. Yes, sweetheart. Are we safe now? I swallowed the lump in my throat. Yes, I whispered. We're safe now. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. I should have felt relief knowing Eric was behind bars. But I didn't. Not yet. Not while she was still out there. My mother, the woman who raised me, who once kissed my bruised knees and told me monsters weren't real, turned out to be the most dangerous monster of them all. The one who used love like a leash and guilt like a weapon. Eric may have been desperate, pathetic in his endless gambling and lies. But Eleanor? She had planned this. She had looked me in the eye for years, told me she loved me, told me I was her pride and joy, while bleeding me dry, one financial favor at a time. And when I finally said no, she didn't just cut me off, she targeted my son. She made Noah a pawn, a bargaining chip, a weapon to make me bend. She knew where my weakness lived, right there in my boy's bright eyes and hopeful heart. I knew exactly where she was hiding. A dingy little motel on the outskirts of town, probably still clinging to the last scraps of pride, telling herself I'd come crawling back. She always thought she had power over me, that I'd never turn my back on her, not fully. She thought I'd feel guilty, that blood was thicker than betrayal. She had never been more wrong. I waited 2 full days before going to her. I wanted her to stew in that cheap, smoky motel room, wondering if I was coming for her, or if I'd finally, truly cut her off. I wanted her to feel helpless for once, to experience that cold uncertainty she'd made me live with for years. When I finally knocked on her door, she opened it within seconds, like she'd been pacing. Her eyes widened, her expression twisting into a mask of sweet concern. Olivia, she said, voice gentle and rehearsed. I was just about to call you. I smiled, but it wasn't warm. Oh, I'm sure you were. The room was stale, the curtains yellowed with age and smoke. Her suitcases were zipped up by the door. I noticed how clean she looked, hair done, lipstick fresh, her nails still painted the same cherry red. She wasn't broke yet, but she was preparing for it. I walked in without asking, my heels echoing softly on the linoleum floor. She closed the door behind me, her eyes studying me like I was a stranger. Going somewhere? I asked, turning to face her. She laughed lightly, brushing imaginary lint from her shoulder. Sweetheart, this has all been a misunderstanding. I never meant for any of this to upset you. You know how your brother can be, always making poor choices. I just got caught in the middle. I crossed my arms, letting my smile sharpen. And yet, you helped him. She faltered just a bit, but she was good at this. She knew how to shift blame without blinking. He was in trouble, Olivia. Real trouble. I was trying to protect him. You know I didn't mean to hurt you or Noah. If you what? If you left my child sitting alone and locked out of a house? If you tried to scare me into reopening the money pipeline? I wasn't yelling. My voice was calm, flat. And I could see how much more that shook her. I wasn't emotional anymore, I was cold. She started to say something else, probably a new lie or excuse, but I raised a hand. Stop. Just stop. Her lips pressed together tightly. Her eyes shifted toward her phone on the nightstand. She was still hoping for Eric to call, still dreaming of someone to save her. I reached into my bag and pulled out the manila folder I'd brought. I tossed it on the bed like a dropped gavel. Do you know what these are? She hesitated before picking them up. Her eyes scanned the first page, and I watched her go pale. Her name, her account numbers, her transfers, the ones that directly connected her to Eric's fraud. Not just an enabler, an accomplice. Her fingers trembled. Where did you get this? I tilted my head. You raised a lawyer, remember? She took a deep breath, trying to compose herself, but I saw the shift. Her shoulders straightened, and she looked me in the eye. Her mask snapped back on. And what are you going to do, Olivia? Turn me in? I'm your mother. That word, mother, sounded so hollow coming from her, like a line she read off a script she no longer understood. I stepped closer. You stopped being my mother the second you used my child to manipulate me. She swallowed hard. For the first time, I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before.
Fear.
Without a word, I pulled out my phone and hit play on the audio file. Her voice filled the air, clear and calm. Too calm.
Don't worry, Eric. She'll give in. She's too soft.
Just leave Noah for a few hours. She'll come running. By tomorrow, we'll have the money. The recording ended, but the silence afterward screamed louder. She took a step back, voice cracking. Olivia. I wasn't thinking clearly. I slid my phone back into my purse. The police will be here soon. She blinked rapidly. You wouldn't. I stepped closer, quiet but firm. I would. And I did. There was a knock at the door. Her face twisted in panic. Olivia, please don't do this. I didn't flinch. Like you said, this is just a misunderstanding. The door opened. 2 officers entered, their faces blank but professional. Miss Bennett, one of them asked me. I nodded. That's her. Eleanor stumbled back as they approached. Please, Olivia, she whispered again, her voice cracking. But I didn't beg. I didn't argue. I just stood still as they cuffed her and read her rights. For decades, I had carried her, paid her bills, covered her lies, forgave the unforgivable.
But now?
Now she had nothing. I turned my back before they walked her out. I didn't need to see her cry. Outside, the air was cooler than I expected. The sky was beginning to darken, the wind just soft enough to remind me I was still breathing. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. For the first time in my life, I was truly, completely free. The trial didn't take long. The evidence was overwhelming. The bank records, the voice recordings, the security footage, it was all there, laid out in perfect, undeniable detail. My mother tried to fight it at first, putting on her usual act, shedding fake tears, playing the victim like she had so many times before. But this time, there was no one left to believe her lies. Not even Ryan, who sat in the courtroom, his eyes locked on the floor, refusing to meet her gaze. Eric had already taken a plea deal. The moment he realized how deep he was in, he did what he had always done. He looked for a way out. And throwing my mother under the bus was his only option. He admitted to everything, to using my money, to committing fraud, to abandoning Noah because they thought it would break me. It didn't. When the judge read the final sentence, 8 years for Eric, 5 for my mother, there was no satisfaction in it. No joy. Just a quiet, final ending to a chapter of my life I should have closed a long time ago. I sat in the back of the courtroom, listening to my mother's pleas, her desperate sobs as she begged for leniency. I didn't move.
I didn't react.
She had taught me well. Crocodile tears meant nothing. After the sentencing, I walked outside and took a deep breath. The sky was clear, the air crisp. For the first time in years, I felt light. Noah was waiting for me by the car. He had been too young to sit through the trial, but he knew enough. When I reached him, he took my hand and squeezed it. "Is it over?" he asked quietly. I looked down at him, at my son, the only family that had ever truly mattered. "Yes, sweetheart. It's over." The weeks that followed were strange, almost too quiet. For years, my phone had never stopped ringing with demands, with guilt trips, with manipulations disguised as motherly love.
Now?
Silence. I wasn't sure if I liked it or if it unsettled me. But I knew one thing. I was never going back. I sold my mother's house. The luxury apartment I had been paying for, the car she drove, the credit cards under my name. I wiped it all away like it had never existed. It wasn't out of spite. It was out of necessity. I had spent my life saving them from themselves, and all it had done was make them weaker, greedier, more cruel. Cutting them off was never about revenge. It was about survival. Ryan was placed in foster care after Eric's sentencing. He had no one left, no mother, no father, no grandmother willing to fight for him. I thought about reaching out, about trying to help, but in the end, I didn't. I had done enough saving for one lifetime. And besides, Ryan had made his choice. He had stood by his father, mocked my son, abandoned Noah when he needed him most. Maybe one day, he would realize the weight of that decision. Maybe one day, he would come looking for answers. But I wouldn't be waiting. Noah, on the other hand, thrived. Slowly, the worry in his eyes faded. The nightmares that had woken him up for weeks after the incident became less frequent. And one afternoon, months later, he came home from school, grinning ear to ear, his soccer jersey covered in dirt. "I scored the winning goal today," he announced proudly, holding up his medal. I knelt down, cupping his face in my hands. "I'm so proud of you, Noah." He looked at me carefully, then asked, "Are you happy now, Mom?" I smiled, but this time it wasn't forced. It wasn't pretending. "Yes, baby. I really am." That night, as he slept, I sat alone in the living room, the quiet wrapping around me like a blanket. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. There was nothing lurking in the shadows, no threats waiting on the other end of the phone. Just peace. I poured myself a glass of wine, letting the past settle behind me. My mother and Eric had tried to teach me a lesson. Instead, I had taught them one. And I had won. My sister accidentally sent me a video. My parents mocking me, calling me a clueless ATM and a foolish girl. Hurt, I cut off the $5,000 I'd been sending them every month. Days later, they stormed in furious. My mom slapped me, screaming, "Why did you stop the money?" I stayed quiet and laughed. They had no idea what a mistake they had made. I used to believe that helping your family, especially your parents, was the most natural, noble thing you could do. For years, I lived by that belief. My name is Alyssa Monroe. I'm 38 years old, a tech entrepreneur based in Austin, Texas, and for over 5 years, I sent my parents $5,000 every single month. No questions asked. No expectations. Just a daughter doing her part. They told me it was for medical bills, for the mortgage, for emergencies. My dad, Douglas, had retired from real estate years ago, and my mom, Martha, used to be a schoolteacher before stepping away due to health reasons. I was doing well with my business, better than I ever expected, so it felt only right to help them. My younger sister Chloe, who's 7 years younger and still trying to make it as a freelance designer, also leaned on me from time to time. Business loans, rent, design tools, whenever she asked, I sent. At first, I didn't think twice about it. That's just who I was. The reliable one. The successful daughter who never said no. Every time they needed something, I gave. Every time Chloe called in tears about a client who hadn't paid, or a landlord threatening eviction, I transferred money. I'd even postponed buying my dream house to continue supporting them. I told myself I was doing the right thing. That family comes first. But I didn't realize that while I was busy playing savior, they were playing me. Everything changed at a family barbecue on a hot Sunday afternoon in July. My parents hosted it in their backyard, the one I assumed they were renting, since they'd always claimed they couldn't afford a down payment. Chloe had come in from out of town, and we were all enjoying burgers and awkward small talk. I remember thinking, for once, we looked like a normal, happy family. Until my phone buzzed. It was from Chloe. A video. At first, I thought it might have been a group shot from the party. But when I opened it, I froze. It wasn't meant for me. In the video, Chloe was sitting in what looked like my parents' living room, laughing alongside Mom and Dad. They didn't know they were being recorded, or maybe they didn't care. Chloe was holding the phone selfie style, and they were all smiling like they'd just heard the best joke in the world. "She's our walking blank check," Chloe said, laughing. "I told you," Dad added, shaking his head. "Fake a hospital visit, and she sends cash before you can say copay." "She cries if she thinks we're struggling," Mom chimed in. "Send her a sad voice note, and boom, $5,000. Every time." "Seriously," Chloe snorted. "She still thinks you're renting this place." My entire body went cold. I watched it twice, just to make sure I heard right. My parents, my own sister, joking about me like I was a clueless aim, calling me names, laughing at my kindness. I didn't say anything at the party. I couldn't. I was too stunned. But as I drove home that night, I saw everything clearly. The fake emergencies, the exaggerated sob stories, the guilt trips. None of it had been real. That night, I sat on my bed and made one of the clearest decisions of my life. I cut off the money. I didn't call to explain. I didn't reply to their usual end-of-the-month reminders. I just stopped. 3 days later, the storm hit. First came the texts. "Did the transfer bounce? Did you forget this month? Everything okay?" I ignored them. Then the calls, first Chloe, then Mom, then Dad. I let them all go to voicemail. I couldn't stomach the thought of hearing their voices pretending everything was fine. And then they showed up. It was early evening. I had just wrapped a call with one of my developers when I heard the doorbell. I checked the camera.
It was them.
All three. My stomach dropped. I should have turned off the lights and pretended I wasn't home. But some foolish part of me still needed to face them. I opened the door. "What the hell is going on?" My dad barked the second he saw me. "No warning, no message? You just stopped sending money," Mom added, her face twisted with rage. "You saw the video," Chloe muttered under her breath, her eyes darting away from mine. "I did," I said quietly, holding my ground. "And I heard everything you said about me." "So what?" Dad snapped. "We were joking." "Joking," I repeated. "You called me a blank check. You bragged about manipulating me." "You're being dramatic," Mom spat. "You think you're better than us now? Because you make more money." I didn't say anything. I just stared at them. And that silence? It drove them mad. Then it happened. In a sudden burst of anger, Mom raised her hand and slapped me across the face. Hard. "You ungrateful little girl," she screamed. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I didn't yell back. I just stood there. Because what they didn't know, what they never even thought to guess, was that the entire thing was being recorded. Every word, every threat, every slap. I had installed a discreet security camera in the corner of my living room months ago after a break-in scare. It had captured everything in crystal clear HD. I closed the door behind them without another word. And as their angry voices faded down my driveway, I walked to my desk, opened my laptop, and hit play. Their betrayal wasn't just personal anymore. It was evidence. And I wasn't just heartbroken. I was ready to make them regret underestimating me. After they left my house that night, I sat in silence for a long time. My cheek was still stinging from the slap, but that wasn't what hurt the most. It was the realization that my own family, people I had bent over backwards to support, saw me as nothing more than a money machine. A walking blank check. And worse, they were comfortable saying that out loud, laughing about it, thinking I'd never find out. But I had. And now I had evidence.
I didn't react right away.
I wasn't about to throw a tantrum or confront them emotionally.
No.
I'd done that in the past, and it had always ended with me apologizing me for caring too much. This time I was going to be smart.
Cold even.
because now it wasn't just about betrayal. It was about justice. I called the only person I trusted to help me think straight, Aunt Lorraine, my dad's sister. She lived in Seattle and had been mostly out of the family picture for years. I'd always assumed she just liked her space, but that night, I found out the truth. When I told her everything, the video, the slap, the years of financial support, she wasn't surprised. Not even a little. They did the same thing to me 20 years ago, she said calmly. Not to the same degree, but the guilt, the manipulation, the fake helplessness, it's their pattern. You're kidding, I whispered, stunned. I wish I was. I cut them off back then. They turned the entire family against me, but I've never regretted it. We talked for nearly 2 hours. She reminded me that this wasn't my fault, that I hadn't failed them, they had failed me. And then she gave me the best advice I'd heard in years. Don't let them keep writing your story. Take the pen back. And that's exactly what I planned to do. The next morning, I called Megan, my attorney and close friend. I told her everything. She didn't even try to hide her outrage. Please tell me you still have that video, she said. I do. And the camera footage too from the slap.
Good.
That's emotional abuse and assault on top of everything else. Megan helped me map out the plan. First, we document everything, every bank transfer, every fake emergency text, every guilt trip voicemail. I had years of digital trails. Second, we'd verify the financial side. I pulled up statements showing more than $300,000 in total money sent over the last 5.5 years. Third, we'd preserve all digital evidence and back it up to cloud storage, just in case they tried to do something crazy, like sue me for cutting them off. You never know with people like that. While Megan worked on the legal angles, I began preparing the truth. I wasn't looking for sympathy or drama. I just wanted to expose the truth, especially to the people in my circle who had always seen my family as picture perfect. My team, my business partners, even some of my close friends, I had to show them what was really going on. I wanted control of my own narrative for once. So I sat down and wrote. I detailed the years of support, the sacrifices I'd made, and how I believed every sad story my parents and Chloe told me. I described the night I got the video, how they mocked me, and how the confrontation ended with my own mother striking me in my home. I embedded clips from the video and the security footage, not the full thing, just enough to show it was real. No editing, no dramatizing, just the truth. Then I posted it all to my blog. And I shared the link on my personal social media pages with a simple message. Sometimes, the people you love the most turn out to be the ones who never saw you as a person, just a resource. This is my story. Within hours, the post blew up. At first, it was just a few shares and some shocked comments from friends. Then strangers started reading it. It was being shared in groups, tweeted, blogged about. People wrote to me telling their own stories of being used, manipulated, and betrayed by their families.
It was heartbreaking.
But it was also empowering. I wasn't alone. And then the media caught on. A local Austin news outlet reached out for an interview. I declined, but they still ran the story using the public blog post. The headline read, "Successful entrepreneur cuts off family after discovering shocking betrayal." That's when everything really exploded. Within days, the rest of the world knew exactly who Douglas, Martha, and Chloe Monroe were. And more importantly, what they'd done. They, of course, were furious. They tried to contact me, but I'd already blocked their numbers and emails. They even created new accounts to message me, begging me to take everything down. "Think about the damage you're causing," one message said. "No," I whispered to myself, "you caused this. I'm just showing the receipts." Then came the threats. Legal action. Accusations. Claims that I had twisted the story, taken things out of context. That the video was a joke. That the slap was an accident. But none of it mattered, because I had the evidence. That's when Megan filed the official legal complaint. Fraud, financial exploitation, emotional abuse, and physical assault. We had enough to make a real case, and we did. The day they got served must have been a nightmare for them. But I didn't feel guilty. I felt peaceful.
Calm.
Like I had finally taken back something that had been stolen from me a long time ago. My voice. They thought I'd stay quiet, that I'd keep giving, that I'd forgive again, like always. But I wasn't the same Alyssa anymore.
And I wasn't finished.
Not even close. Filing the lawsuit was the beginning of the end, for them, at least. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the right one. Megan walked me through every step of the process, making sure we had everything in order. She said we had a solid case, and from the reactions I'd seen online, people clearly believed the truth. But deep down, I wasn't doing this for sympathy or attention. I was doing this for myself, for the version of me that spent years putting everyone else's needs before my own and getting used in return. Once the paperwork was filed and processed, we received confirmation. They were officially under investigation. Charges were being considered for fraud, financial exploitation, emotional abuse, and assault. Just reading those words in black and white felt surreal. These were my parents, my sister, people who were supposed to protect me, not become the ones I needed protection from. Of course, they didn't take the news well. They showed up at my house again. This time it was just my parents, no Chloe. It was early evening, and I had just returned from a short walk when I saw their car parked in my driveway. My stomach turned. I almost turned around, but I reminded myself, I'm not afraid of them anymore. I opened the door before they could ring the bell. They looked tired, disheveled. The polished appearances I was so used to seeing, gone. My dad's face was red with anger, and my mom looked like she'd been crying for days. We need to talk, my father growled. No, I said, blocking the doorway. You need to leave. This is insane, Alyssa, my mother said, stepping forward. How could you do this to your own family? I didn't flinch. How could you do what you did and think you'd get away with it? We were joking, my dad snapped. You're ruining our lives over some harmless teasing. Harmless. I repeated, my voice calm. Mocking me behind my back, stealing from me, slapping me in my own home. Does that sound harmless to you? My mom's lips tightened. You're overreacting. You always have. Everything we did was out of necessity. I shook my head slowly. You bought a condo, joined a country club, and took vacations while telling me you couldn't pay for medication. It wasn't like that. Enough. I cut her off. I don't owe you an explanation. And unless you're here to admit what you did and take accountability, there's nothing more to say. They stood there in silence, shocked that I wasn't budging. Eventually they turned and left. But not before my father said one last thing. You'll regret this, Alyssa. Family is everything. You've just thrown yours away. I closed the door without responding. In the days that followed, things escalated. Chloe finally reached out, not with an apology, but with a demand. She sent me a long email blaming me for tearing the family apart. She said she'd lost clients, her reputation was in ruins, and she couldn't believe I'd go this far. There was no acknowledgement of the video. No mention of the things she said. Just deflection, excuses, and finger-pointing. I didn't reply. Instead, I focused on what came next. Megan helped me work with a forensic accountant to track where all my money had gone. The findings were shocking, even to me. Nearly every transfer I'd made over the past 5 years, more than $330,000, had gone into personal luxuries, designer clothes, high-end electronics, lavish getaways. My father had even made payments on a second car I didn't know they had. The truth wasn't just hurtful, it was infuriating. Meanwhile, the investigation moved quickly. Thanks to the overwhelming evidence, it wasn't long before the authorities stepped in. One morning, Megan called me and said, "They've been arrested." I froze. What? They arrested your parents this morning.
Chloe too.
Fraud, financial abuse, assault, everything we documented. They're being held for questioning. For a moment, I didn't know how to feel. Relief? Shock? Sadness? It was all jumbled together. I sat down on my couch, staring at nothing, as the weight of everything finally started to lift. They were actually being held accountable. The news spread quickly. The same media outlets that picked up my original blog post were now reporting the arrests. Headlines like "Family Arrested After Daughter Exposes Long-Term Fraud" started popping up online. I didn't comment publicly anymore. I didn't need to. The truth was out, and it was doing its job. In the following weeks, things changed. They lost the condo. It went into foreclosure after missed mortgage payments. Their bank accounts were frozen. Chloe's design business shut down completely after sponsors and clients pulled away. According to a friend of a friend, my parents were now living in a small rental property outside of town, something well below their usual standards. For the first time, they were living within their means. But I wasn't celebrating their downfall.
That wasn't what this was about for me.
I wasn't out for revenge just to see them suffer. I wanted the cycle to stop. I wanted to take control of my life again, to stop being the person everyone leaned on while secretly laughing behind my back. That's why I started something new. I used my experience, my platform, and my pain to create a nonprofit for people like me, adults who had been financially manipulated or emotionally abused by their families. It started small, a support group, some online resources, a hotline. But it grew fast.
People needed it.
People needed to feel seen and heard, just like I had. A few months after the arrests, I got a letter in the mail.
Handwritten.
No return address, but I knew the handwriting. It was from my mother. It was 4 pages long, filled with half apologies and emotional pleas. She said they were sorry, but also said they didn't know how else to survive. She talked about being embarrassed, humiliated, ashamed of how far things had gone. At the end, she asked for forgiveness. I stared at the pages, trying to feel something.
Anything.
Anger.
Sadness. Pity.
But I didn't feel any of it. Just clarity. They were finally facing consequences. And I was finally free. But I also knew, deep down, that this story wasn't quite over yet. The letter from my mother stayed on my desk for days. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away, but I also couldn't bring myself to respond. It wasn't just the words, it was everything that had led to those words. All the lies, the fake emergencies, the manipulation,
The slap.
the mockery. And even now, after everything had come crashing down, the letter still tried to shift the blame. We didn't know how else to survive.
As if that justified what they did.
As if taking advantage of me was their only option. I knew better now. Their court case went to trial 6 weeks after their arrest. It was surreal walking into that courtroom and seeing them sitting on the other side, my own family wearing formal clothes like they were trying to appear respectable. My father barely looked at me. My mother glanced over once, but when our eyes met, she quickly looked away. Chloe stared straight ahead the entire time, expression stiff, like she was just waiting for it to be over. The prosecutors did their job well. They laid everything out. The money trail, the false claims, the recorded conversations, the security footage. It wasn't just a family squabble. It was documented financial abuse. And when the footage of the slap played on the courtroom screen, I heard a gasp from someone in the gallery. It echoed the one I'd let out when I first watched it myself. The room fell completely silent after that. My statement came near the end. I was nervous at first. My hands were shaking, but the second I started speaking, everything poured out of me. I talked about how much I'd loved my family, how I believed every word they said for years, how I'd put my own dreams on hold to help them, and how I found out the truth, not through a confrontation or a confession, but through a video that was never meant for me. I was their daughter, I said. Not a bank, not a blank check. And when I finally stopped giving, they showed me exactly who they were. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. The truth was enough. The jury took less than 2 hours to deliberate. All three, my mother, my father, and Chloe, were found guilty.
Fraud.
Financial exploitation. Assault. They didn't get long prison sentences, 2 years each, plus restitution, but it was enough. Enough to validate everything I had been through. Enough to make it clear that what they did was wrong. That I wasn't crazy. That I wasn't overreacting. After the verdict, I stepped outside the courthouse and took the deepest breath I'd taken in years. The weight I had carried for so long, it didn't disappear completely, but it got lighter. Manageable. Like I could finally move forward. The next few months were quiet. Peaceful even. For the first time, I didn't have to brace myself every time my phone rang. I didn't wake up to guilt-tripping texts or calls asking for money. I focused on my business, my nonprofit, and my own healing. I spent time with people who loved me without expecting anything in return. I learned to trust again, slowly, carefully. My nonprofit began to grow. More people started coming forward with their stories. People who had been used by family, manipulated into silence, made to feel guilty for setting boundaries. Some of their stories were even worse than mine: decades of abuse, hundreds of thousands stolen, entire lives dictated by guilt. But there was something powerful in the connection, in knowing you're not alone. We launched a campaign called More Than Blood, sharing real stories anonymously to shed light on financial abuse within families. The response was overwhelming. Survivors reached out, therapists offered to volunteer, even lawyers like Megan joined to provide free consultations. We weren't just talking about the problem anymore, we were helping people find their way out of it. A year passed. I didn't hear from my parents or Chloe again after the trial. I knew they were serving time, but I didn't follow the details. I didn't need to. I had my closure. Not the kind where everything is tied up with a pretty bow, but the kind where you finally stop bleeding. And then one morning I got a message. It was from a former family friend, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. She told me that my parents were being released early for good behavior, and that Chloe had already been out for a few weeks. I stared at the message for a long time. A few days later, I came home to find a familiar car parked near the curb. My stomach flipped. I didn't want drama. I didn't want a scene. But I was ready, stronger, smarter, and no longer afraid. I walked up the driveway and saw them, my parents, standing on my porch, looking older, thinner, more worn than I'd ever seen them. Chloe wasn't there. They didn't say anything right away. Just watched me approach, waiting for some kind of sign. When I got close enough, my mother finally spoke. "We just want to talk," she said softly. I didn't answer. "We've lost everything," my father added. "The house, the car, our friends. We've paid the price." "You didn't pay," I said calmly. "You served time. There's a difference." "We're sorry, Alyssa," my mother said. "Truly. We've had time to think. We were wrong." "Not just wrong," I replied. "Cruel, calculated, and selfish." My father sighed. "We're not asking for money. We're asking for a chance to fix things." "I spent years giving you chances," I said. "And every time, you took more than I offered. This time, I'm choosing myself." "We're your parents," my mother whispered, eyes glossy. "Family." I shook my head. "Family doesn't destroy you and call it love. Family doesn't see your kindness as weakness." I walked past them and opened my door. "You can go now," I said quietly. "There's nothing left here for you." They didn't follow. After a moment, I heard their footsteps retreat down the path. The car door closed. The engine started. And then they were gone. I stood in the doorway for a moment, the wind brushing against my skin, and smiled to myself. Because in the end, I got my justice. Not just in the courtroom, but in my heart. I took back control of my life. I exposed the truth. I stopped the cycle. And for the first time in my adult life, I was truly free. Not because they were gone, but because I had finally chosen me. My parents called me a burden, cut off my college funds, and told me to survive on my own. They demanded I pay for my dropout sister's lifestyle, and when I refused, they threw me out. 8 years later, at my sister's wedding, they laughed at me, saying a disowned girl had no future. But then, her fiancé slammed his glass down, turned to them, and said, "Do you even know who she is now?" As I stepped into the grand ballroom of the oceanfront resort in Los Angeles, I could feel the weight of the past pressing down on me. The chandeliers sparkled above, and the hum of conversation filled the air, but none of it made me feel at ease. I wasn't here for pleasure. I was here because Ethan, my husband, had business connections with Ryan Green, the groom. If it weren't for Ethan's involvement in Ryan's real estate projects, I would never have set foot in this place. Not because I wasn't invited, but because the bride was my estranged sister, Madison Green. I never thought I'd see her again. Not after 8 years. Ethan, ever the calm and composed man he was, squeezed my hand gently as we moved through the crowd. "Are you okay?" he asked in a low voice. I forced a small smile. "I'll be fine," I whispered. But I wasn't sure if that was true. The moment we entered, I felt it, the stares, the murmurs, whispers of my name laced with disdain and mockery. At first, I ignored them, focusing on walking beside Ethan as we made our way to our seats. But then, I heard a voice that made my stomach twist. Why is she here? After all these years, she still dares to show up? She's nothing but a failure. A burden. I froze. My mother's voice. And then another. More like a disgrace, a sickeningly familiar voice added. "Madison. I can't believe she's here. What does she want? To ruin my wedding?" I felt my heartbeat quicken, but I didn't turn around. They didn't deserve my attention. But my mother and sister weren't the type to speak softly. They wanted me to hear them. I clenched my fists, trying to block out the memories. The night they disowned me. I had spent my whole childhood in their shadows. My parents worshipped Madison, pampered her, and poured every penny into her future. Meanwhile, I was just the extra daughter, the one they kept around but never truly cared for. When it was time for me to attend college, I had high hopes.
I was smart.
I had good grades. I was ready. But my parents crushed my dreams in a single conversation. "You don't need college, Charlotte. Madison does," my father had told me, his tone leaving no room for argument. "She's going to do something great with her life. You, on the other hand, it's time you contribute." Contribute? I had repeated, stunned. "Yes," my mother had chimed in. "You're an adult now. Start working. You'll help support Madison's studies and her lifestyle." They weren't just refusing to fund my education. They were ordering me to work and give my earnings to Madison. I had refused. I had no choice but to refuse. And for that, they threw me out. That was 8 years ago. 8 long years of struggle. I had left home with nothing but a few clothes and a heart full of determination. I worked endless hours, juggling multiple jobs just to survive. But I had something Madison never had: grit. I refused to crumble. I studied on my own, found opportunities, and eventually built my own company in the tech industry. Now, I was a CEO, a successful woman who had built her empire from scratch. And yet, standing in this ballroom, hearing their voices again, I realized they still saw me as the nobody they threw away. Ethan must have sensed my tension because he wrapped an arm around my waist protectively. "You don't have to stay," he murmured. "I know," I said. But something inside me refused to run. I had done nothing wrong. If anyone should feel ashamed, it was them. At that moment, another voice joined the conversation behind me. "Ryan." "What's going on?" he asked, his voice puzzled. "Ryan, you won't believe it." Madison's voice rang out, filled with exaggerated distress. "My estranged sister is here. The one I told you about. The disgrace." I turned then, finally facing them. Madison's expression was twisted with fake shock and outrage, but I could see the flicker of something else beneath it. Fear. She hadn't expected me to show up. Ryan, however, looked stunned. His eyes darted between me and Madison as if trying to piece together a puzzle that suddenly didn't make sense. "Wait, your sister?" Ryan asked, his brow furrowing. "Charlotte Carter?" Madison's confidence wavered for a split second. "Why, yes," she stammered. "I told you about her. The one who... the CEO?" Ryan cut her off, his expression shifting. The color drained from Madison's face. Ethan, standing beside me, smirked slightly. He knew exactly what was happening. Ryan wasn't just some random businessman, he was well-connected. And he knew who I was. I tilted my head slightly. "That's right," I said, my voice calm. "Charlotte Carter, CEO of Carter Innovations." The silence that followed was almost deafening. Ryan's shock turned into something else, realization. He looked back at Madison, who was visibly panicked now. "You told me she was a failure," Ryan said slowly. "You said she was useless, that she was a burden." Madison opened and closed her mouth, but no words came out. She had lied, and Ryan had just figured it out. I held Ryan's gaze for a moment before turning to Madison. "You always did love rewriting history," I said softly. "But the truth has a funny way of catching up, doesn't it?" Madison's hands clenched into fists, her face turning red with fury. "You don't belong here," she snapped. "Neither do you," I replied smoothly. "Because if I recall, this venue is owned by Carter Enterprises. And Ethan has an office here." Madison's eyes widened in horror. She hadn't known. This resort, the place she chose for her grand wedding, was partially owned by my husband's company. The irony was delicious. I didn't wait for her response. Instead, I turned to Ethan and smiled. "Shall we get a drink?" Ethan chuckled, his eyes filled with pride. "Absolutely." As we walked away, I could still feel Madison's burning glare on my back. But it didn't matter. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one who felt small. And that was just the beginning. I could still feel Madison's burning glare on my back as Ethan and I walked toward the bar. The weight of the moment lingered, but I refused to let it pull me down. I had been through worse. My past had shaped me, but it no longer controlled me. Ethan ordered a drink, keeping his arm around me as if silently reminding me he was there. I exhaled slowly, pushing away the emotions that threatened to surface. I had faced Madison and my mother again after 8 years. The moment I had dreaded had come, and yet I was still standing. "Charlotte." I turned at the sound of my name, finding Ryan standing a few feet away, his expression unreadable. Behind him, Madison lingered near the entrance, still glaring, while my mother spoke in hushed but frantic whispers to my father. The perfect family image they had always projected was starting to crack. Ryan hesitated for a moment before stepping closer. "I had no idea you were you," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "When Madison talked about you, she made it seem like you were some kind of nobody." I smiled, though there was no humor in it. "That's how she always saw me," I said. "How they all did." Ethan's grip on his glass tightened. He hated hearing how they treated me. He had always told me he wished he had met me sooner, that he would have taken me away from them years ago. But I had to build myself up on my own. Ryan looked between me and Ethan, realization setting in. "Madison told me she had a successful older sister," he admitted. "But she said you married into your success, that you latched onto a wealthy man and lived off his fortune." Ethan let out a low, amused chuckle, while I merely raised an eyebrow. "Is that what she told you?" I mused. "Interesting. Because I built my company before I ever met Ethan." Ryan blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Wait, so Carter Innovations is mine?" I finished for him. His mouth opened slightly, then closed again. He turned and stared at Madison, who was now looking like she wanted the ground to swallow her whole. "Madison?" Ryan's voice was sharper now. "You told me she was nothing, that she was a failure." Madison forced a laugh, though it came out shaky. "Oh, come on, Ryan. Are you really going to believe her over me?" She stepped forward, placing a hand on his arm. "I told you, she's always been manipulative. That's what she does." Ryan pulled his arm away, his face now filled with something colder, suspicion. "And you told me you graduated from college," he said slowly. "You told me you had a business degree." A horrible silence fell over the room. Madison's face drained of color. I tilted my head slightly, waiting to see how she would play this. Madison had always been a skilled liar. She could twist any situation in her favor. But tonight, she had no control over the narrative. I did graduate," she stammered. "Ryan, don't be ridiculous." "Then prove it," Ryan challenged, pulling out his phone. "What's the name of your university? I'll call them right now." Madison's panic was instant. Her hands clenched at her sides, and her eyes darted toward our parents as if searching for help. But my mother and father were frozen in place, their expressions unreadable. For once, they weren't coming to her rescue. "Ryan, stop," Madison snapped. "This isn't the time for this. It's our wedding day." "You're right," Ryan said coolly. "It is. And I'd like to know if my wife has been lying to me before I say I do. I folded my arms, waiting. Madison was running out of ways to escape. Then, in a move so desperate it was almost laughable, she lunged at Ryan's phone, trying to snatch it from his hands. The next few seconds felt like slow motion. Ryan jerked back, but Madison was determined. She grabbed the phone, raised it high, and then
Slam.
she threw it to the ground, the screen shattering on impact. The room fell into dead silence. Everyone had seen it. Every single guest in that ballroom had just witnessed the bride lose all control. Madison's breath was ragged, her chest rising and falling quickly. For a moment, she looked wild, like a trapped animal. Ryan stared at her, his expression unreadable. But I could see the moment it clicked for him, the moment he truly understood. "You lied," he murmured. Madison opened her mouth, but no words came out. Ryan exhaled sharply, then turned and walked away. Just like that. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He was done. The realization hit Madison like a punch. "Ryan, wait," she cried, chasing after him. I watched them go, my stomach tightening. I knew what would come next. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about Madison's entire web of lies unraveling, and there was no way to stop it now. I turned toward my parents, expecting to see rage. But instead, I saw something else.
Fear.
They knew. They knew that if Madison's lies were exposed, it would only be a matter of time before theirs were. 2. Ethan leaned closer to me, murmuring in my ear, "Do you want to leave?" I thought about it. I had already won. Madison had destroyed herself. My parents were watching their perfect family image crumble. And yet, a part of me wanted to stay just a little longer. Because this wasn't over.
Not yet.
The room still buzzed with whispers long after Madison and Ryan had disappeared from sight. I could feel eyes darting toward me, toward my parents, toward the shattered remains of Ryan's phone lying on the marble floor like a symbol of Madison's self-destruction. Yet, I remained still, my fingers lightly tracing the rim of my glass as I watched the chaos unravel. Madison had always been reckless, but this time, she had destroyed herself completely. She had spent years crafting a perfect image, a brilliant, well-educated woman married into wealth, but tonight, the entire foundation had cracked. And the best part? I hadn't lifted a single finger to make it happen. I felt Ethan lean in again, his voice calm but firm. "Charlotte, we can leave now." I considered it. I had already seen enough. Madison was spiraling, Ryan was no fool, and my parents, well, they had finally felt the consequences of their choices. But something kept me planted to the floor. Not vengeance. Not even satisfaction. Just closure. I turned my attention to my parents. They had been uncharacteristically silent, their faces rigid as they tried to process what had just happened. For the first time in my life, they didn't look like the untouchable, controlling figures I had known as a child. They looked small, afraid.
Mom.
"Dad," I finally said, my voice even. They flinched, like they hadn't expected me to acknowledge them. My father looked at me first, his eyes narrowing in an attempt to mask his unease with anger.
"What do you want?" he snapped.
I raised an eyebrow. That's an interesting question. I wasn't the one chasing someone down a hallway tonight. My mother, still shaken, finally spoke. "You should have never come here," she hissed under her breath. I let out a short laugh. "I was invited. You're the ones acting like I broke into some secret family gathering." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You humiliated Madison." "I didn't do anything," I corrected, sipping my drink. "She did it all on her own." Silence. I tilted my head slightly. "But you already knew that, didn't you?" My father's fists clenched at his sides, but he said nothing. Of course, they knew. They had been cleaning up Madison's messes her whole life. They had lied for her, covered for her, pushed all their expectations onto me because they knew Madison could never actually carry them. For years, I had been nothing more than a financial backup plan. They had kept me around just long enough to try and force me into paying for Madison's lifestyle, and when I refused, they had thrown me away like I never mattered. But I had survived. And I had done it without them. The longer they stayed quiet, the more their shame became obvious. They weren't arguing because there was nothing to argue against. They knew I was right. And for the first time, I could see the real fear in their eyes. Not just because of Madison. Not just because Ryan had probably figured out the truth and was questioning everything. But because they knew what was coming next. My father was the first to break, straightening his tie and forcing a scoff. "Well, whatever happens, we're still family," he muttered. Family. That word meant nothing coming from them. "Are we?" I asked, my voice light, but my meaning clear. Because the last time I checked, family doesn't disown their child for refusing to hand over their paychecks. My mother's jaw clenched. "We gave you a home. We raised you. And you threw me out." I cut her off sharply. "And now, suddenly, I'm your daughter again?" I saw panic flash in my mother's eyes, a sign that I had hit the nerve she had desperately tried to protect. They needed something from me. I could see it now. Then I understood. It wasn't just about Madison's humiliation tonight. It was about their own downfall. The realization struck me so hard, I almost laughed out loud. Of course. Their business was crumbling. They had invested so much into Madison, believing she would be their golden ticket, and now that everything was falling apart, they needed a new solution. And that's why they hated seeing me succeed. I was supposed to be beneath them. I was supposed to be struggling. Instead, I had thrived, and they had lost everything. The irony was almost too much to handle. I leaned forward slightly, lowering my voice just enough, so only my parents could hear. "Is that why you're here? You think I'll help you?" My father tensed. "That's ridiculous." My mother looked away. I smirked. So it's true. The anger in my father's expression slipped, replaced by something closer to resentful desperation. He hated admitting it, but he knew I had figured him out. My mother finally spoke, her voice softer this time. "Charlotte, we're still your parents." Something inside me snapped. For years, I had longed to hear those words. For years, I had wanted to matter to them. But not anymore. I set my glass down and met my mother's gaze head-on. "No, you're not." My mother's eyes widened slightly, as if she hadn't expected me to reject her so completely. "You threw me away when I was no longer useful to you." I continued, my voice calm but sharp. "Now that Madison has ruined her life and your business is failing, you suddenly remember that I exist?" My father's fists clenched, but I kept going. "You only care because I'm successful now. If I was still struggling, you wouldn't even look at me," I said, my voice unwavering. "I'm not your daughter. I stopped being that the moment you turned your backs on me." My mother inhaled sharply. "Charlotte, you can't just." "Yes, I can." I cut her off. She opened her mouth to argue, but I was already done. I turned to Ethan, who had been watching quietly, letting me have my moment. He met my gaze and nodded. "Ready to go?" I nodded.
Yeah.
"I think I've seen enough." I stood up, not sparing my parents another glance. They didn't call after me, didn't try to stop me, and that told me everything I needed to know. I had won. I had walked into this room with nothing to prove, but I was leaving knowing that I had done what I once thought was impossible. I had broken free from them completely. As Ethan and I walked toward the exit, I exhaled slowly, feeling a strange sense of peace settle over me.
I wasn't running away this time.
I was simply walking forward, away from my past and toward my future. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt truly free. As Ethan and I stepped out of the ballroom into the cool night air, I took a deep breath. The sky was a deep navy, the distant waves crashing against the shore. The evening had felt like a storm brewing inside me. But now, walking away, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. Ethan's fingers laced with mine, grounding me in the present. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his voice filled with understanding. I exhaled, my shoulders relaxing for the first time that night. "Yeah, I really am." For the first time in a long time, I wasn't holding on to any anger. I wasn't carrying the weight of their expectations, their manipulation, or their cruelty. I had let go. We walked toward the valet, but before we could reach the car, I heard hurried footsteps behind us. A voice called out, "Charlotte, wait." I turned, already knowing who it was. Ryan. He looked different, his usual confidence replaced by something uncertain. His suit was slightly undone, as if he had been running his hands through his hair. His expression wasn't angry or defensive. It was the look of a man who had just seen his life fall apart in real time. Ethan stayed by my side, silent but watchful. Ryan stopped a few feet away, hesitating. He shook his head, exhaling. I had no idea. I said nothing. He let out a bitter laugh, rubbing his jaw. Madison lied about everything. His voice was thick with disbelief, like he was still processing it all. I believed her. I trusted her. And he cut himself off, scoffing. I feel like an idiot. I tilted my head slightly. She's always been good at pretending. He nodded, his lips pressing into a thin line.
Yeah.
And I fell for all of it. His eyes met mine. She told me you were a failure. She told me you had nothing. His voice grew quieter. But you're the most successful person I've met in my entire life. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The truth had already done that for me. Ryan swallowed, his throat bobbing. I called the university she claimed to have graduated from. He let out a harsh chuckle. They've never even heard of her. I wasn't surprised. He shook his head, running a hand through his hair. She tried to lie again. Tried to say you set her up. That this was all some elaborate plan to ruin her. That actually made me laugh. Madison was always good at rewriting reality. Yeah, he muttered, shaking his head. But I'm done believing her. He exhaled sharply, his gaze hardening. I'm filing for an annulment. I blinked. Annulment? He nodded. The marriage was built on lies. Everything about it was a lie. I don't want to be tied to her, not even legally. I studied him for a moment. He wasn't just saying it out of anger. He meant it. Madison had lost everything. Her husband, her reputation, and the life she tried to build on deception. Ryan let out a slow breath. I wanted to say I'm sorry.
His voice softened.
For believing her lies about you. For not seeing what was right in front of me. I could hear the sincerity in his words, the quiet regret. Unlike my parents, Ryan wasn't trying to manipulate me. He wasn't asking for anything. After a pause, I gave him a small nod. I appreciate that. His shoulders relaxed slightly, like he had needed to hear it. Ryan nodded one last time before stepping back. Take care, Charlotte. You too. And with that, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. Ethan squeezed my hand gently. Ready to go home? I smiled, nodding.
Yeah.
Let's go. The drive home was peaceful, the weight on my chest finally gone. My parents had lost everything. Madison had destroyed her own future. Ryan had broken free from the illusion he had been trapped in. And me? I was going home to a life I had built from nothing. A life filled with love, stability, and happiness. When we pulled into the driveway, I saw the warm glow of the lights inside. The moment I stepped through the front door, I heard a sleepy little voice call out, "Mommy?" I turned, my heart melting as Emma stood in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "Hey, sweetheart," I murmured, kneeling down to pull her into my arms. She snuggled into my shoulder, letting out a tiny yawn. Ethan chuckled. "She insisted on waiting up for you." I kissed the top of her head. "Did she?" Emma pulled back slightly, blinking up at me. "Did you get the cake?" I laughed softly, nodding. "Of course." Her sleepy face lit up, and I felt warmth spread through my chest. This was my family. This was my home. Tonight had been the final chapter of a story I had been waiting to close for years. And now it was over. I had nothing left to prove. No one left to fight. For the first time in my life, I wasn't looking back. I was only looking forward. And it felt damn good. When I woke up in that hospital, I was alone. No visits. No calls. My brother saw my accident as a golden opportunity. He drained my accounts, sold my $3 million dream house for pocket change, and wasted it all on his doomed business, with my parents standing behind him. They thought I'd never return. But after a month, when I walked through that door, their faces weren't just shocked, they were terrified. I laughed at them because the house they sold was their biggest mistake. Life has a strange way of showing who truly stands by you when everything falls apart. I learned this the hard way. My name is Jessica Carter, and for years, I believed my family was my greatest support. I was wrong. What I thought was love turned out to be greed in disguise. They didn't just betray me, they erased me from their lives when they thought I was no longer useful. But they underestimated me. I grew up in Miami, Florida, in a well-off family. My grandfather, a successful businessman, always believed in me, while my parents, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, favored my younger brother, Lucas. My grandfather saw potential in me. Before he passed away, he gifted me a $3 million luxury beach house, a place where I built my dreams, where I found peace away from the shadows of my family's favoritism. I worked hard, built my own business, and lived independently, refusing to depend on anyone. But Lucas was different. Lazy, irresponsible, and reckless, he never worked a day in his life. Instead, he dreamed of shortcuts to wealth, mostly illegal ones. My parents enabled him, always defending his mistakes, always making excuses for his failures. He was their golden boy, while I was the one expected to manage on my own. I never let that bother me, until the day I saw how far their greed could go. It started with a road accident.
I don't remember much from that day.
I was driving home after a long business meeting when out of nowhere, a speeding truck slammed into my car. The impact was devastating. Everything went black. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed, barely alive. My body was broken, my strength drained, and my mind foggy from the painkillers. But the real pain? It wasn't physical. At first, I thought my family would be by my side. I was wrong. Days turned into weeks, and not a single one of them came to see me. Not my mother. Not my father. Not Lucas. It was as if I didn't exist. The only person who stayed with me was Dr. Ethan Walker, my childhood friend, and now my lifesaver. He refused to leave my side, making sure I had the best medical care. "You need to focus on getting better, Jessica," he would say every day, his voice full of determination. I wanted to believe he was right, but deep down, a voice whispered that something was wrong. My instincts were screaming at me, warning me that something terrible had happened while I was gone. Then one evening, Ethan finally told me the truth. He had been holding back, not wanting to stress me, but he knew I needed to hear it. "Jessica, I didn't want to tell you this before, but you need to know." He hesitated, his jaw tightening. "Your brother, he sold your beach house." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It felt like the walls around me were caving in. "What?" My voice was barely a whisper. "He forged documents while you were unconscious. He sold your beach house for way less than it's worth. And the worst part? He spent every penny on his illegal business, import and export of God knows what." I shook my head, unable to process it.
No.
That couldn't be true. My family wouldn't allow that, right? My parents wouldn't let him steal from me. Ethan's silence told me everything. They supported him, didn't they? My voice trembled with barely contained rage. Ethan sighed. "They didn't just support him, Jessica. They helped him." I closed my eyes, trying to block out the betrayal crushing me. My own blood had turned against me. My parents, the people who were supposed to protect me, had stood by Lucas as he destroyed everything I built. I wanted to scream, to cry, but I couldn't afford to break.
"Not now."
"How much money?" I forced myself to ask. Ethan's expression darkened. "All of it." He burned through the money like it was nothing. His business? A complete failure. He lost everything. I clenched my fists, feeling a cold rage settle in my chest. They thought I wouldn't come back. They assumed I was too weak to fight. They were wrong. I turned to Ethan, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "Take me home. Jessica, you're not strong enough yet." "I don't care." I cut him off. "I need to see it with my own eyes." Ethan hesitated but finally nodded. "All right, but I'm coming with you." The next morning, he helped me into his car, and we drove toward what was once my home. The drive felt endless, my heart pounding with every mile. My hands shook, not from weakness, but from the sheer fury building inside me. When we arrived, my worst nightmare was confirmed. My home was gone. The beach house that held years of memories, my grandfather's legacy, my safe place, it was no longer mine. In its place stood a sold sign mocking me. The house had been stripped of everything valuable, turned into someone else's possession. Ethan parked the car, but I couldn't move. I just sat there, staring at the ruins of my past life. Then I saw them. Lucas, my parents, laughing. They were sitting in the garden of our old family home, celebrating. As if nothing had happened. As if I had never existed. Something inside me snapped. I pushed the car door open and stepped out. The moment my mother's eyes met mine, the laughter died. My father's face paled. And Lucas? He froze. He looked at me as if he was seeing a ghost. I took a deep breath, my voice calm but deadly. Surprised to see me, Lucas? For a second, no one spoke. Then, Lucas forced a smile, but I could see the panic in his eyes. Jessica, we thought, he laughed nervously. We thought you weren't coming back. I took slow steps toward them. Oh, I came back. And now, we have a lot to talk about. Silence. Thick, suffocating silence. I could see the guilt, the fear. They had thought I was gone forever. They had thought I would never come back to claim what was mine. But I was here, and I wasn't going anywhere. They had no idea what was coming for them. I stood there, staring at the faces of the people I once called family. Lucas, my mother, my father. They had no idea what to say, how to react, because in their minds I was never supposed to return. Lucas was the first to recover from the shock. He stood up quickly, forcing a smirk onto his face, but his eyes betrayed his fear. Jessica, look, we thought you weren't coming back, he said, as if that made everything okay. I felt my hands curl into fists, my nails digging into my palms, but I refused to show my anger. Not yet. You thought I wasn't coming back? I repeated, my voice eerily calm. So, that gave you the right to steal everything from me? Lucas shrugged, trying to appear casual. It wasn't like that. The house, it was just sitting there, Jess. We thought. I cut him off sharply, shifting my gaze toward my parents. My mother looked away, avoiding my eyes, and my father sat frozen, gripping the arms of his chair. They were guilty, and they knew it. I took a deep breath. I wouldn't let them manipulate me with their silence. I turned back to Lucas. Tell me, Lucas, how much did you sell my house for? He hesitated, but I already knew the answer. Half of its worth, wasn't it? I said before he could speak. You sold a $3 million luxury beach house for pennies. And what did you do with all that money? Lucas scoffed, crossing his arms. I invested it, he said defensively. I let out a short, humorless laugh. You mean you threw it all into your illegal business? That struck a nerve. His face twisted with anger. It was a good opportunity. I was going to make it big. You wouldn't understand. I understand perfectly. I stepped closer, my voice dropping into something cold. You took everything I built, everything Grandpa gave me, and you gambled it away like it meant nothing. Lucas clenched his jaw, but before he could respond, my father finally spoke. His voice was tight, defensive. Jessica, you need to understand. We thought you weren't coming back, he said, his words making my stomach turn. I looked at him, my own father, and for the first time, I saw him clearly. He hadn't just let this happen, he had encouraged it. You didn't even check if I was alive, I whispered, the weight of their betrayal settling deep in my chest. Not once. Not a single visit. Nothing. My mother finally raised her eyes, but there was no regret in them. We had to look out for Lucas, she said simply. And there it was. The truth. Lucas had always been their priority. Their golden son. I shook my head. And what about me? Your daughter? My voice cracked slightly, but I quickly steadied it. Or was I just an inconvenience to you? My mother sighed, as if she was tired of this conversation. Jessica, you always managed on your own. You never needed us. I let out a bitter laugh. So, because I was independent, I didn't deserve a family? I looked between them. And that justifies what you did. Lucas rolled his eyes.
Come on, Jess. Stop being dramatic.
It's not like you can do anything about it now. That was his biggest mistake, thinking I was weak, thinking I wouldn't fight back. I straightened my posture, meeting his gaze with unwavering determination. You really think I'm just going to walk away? Lucas smirked. What else can you do? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You're going to find out. I turned on my heel and walked away, Ethan close behind me. I didn't need to argue with them anymore. I had wasted enough energy on people who never cared about me. As soon as we got into the car, Ethan let out a sharp breath. Jessica, are you okay? I turned to him, my jaw clenched.
No, Ethan.
I'm not, but I will be. He nodded, understanding. So, what's next? I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. After 2 rings, a calm, professional voice answered. Rachel Dawson speaking. I exhaled slowly. Rachel, it's Jessica. I need your help. There was a brief pause. Then her voice turned sharp. Tell me everything. And so I did. Every detail, every betrayal, every crime Lucas had committed. By the time I finished, Rachel's voice was steel. They think they've won, she murmured. But they don't realize they've left a trail of evidence a mile long. We can take them down. I nodded.
Good.
Let's do it. Rachel wasted no time. The next morning, we met at her office. She spread out the documents in front of me. First things first, she said. The sale of your beach house was completely fraudulent. Your brother forged your signature. I wasn't surprised. Can we get it back? Rachel smirked. Not just that. We can file criminal charges against him.
Fraud. Theft.
Illegal business dealings. And if your parents were involved, she trailed off, but I understood. They wouldn't just lose me. They would lose everything. Ethan, who had been sitting beside me, crossed his arms. Jessica, are you sure about this? I turned to him. They didn't hesitate to destroy me, Ethan. Why should I hesitate to get justice? Rachel nodded approvingly. I'll start the legal process immediately. But you need to be ready. This won't be easy. I straightened my shoulders. I'm ready. For the first time in months, I felt in control again. I had lost everything, but I wasn't beaten. I was going to take it all back. And this time, they wouldn't see me coming. I spent the next few days preparing myself for the storm that was coming. Lucas and my parents had stolen everything from me, thinking I wouldn't fight back. They thought I was gone, but they didn't realize that I had come back stronger. With Rachel Dawson, my attorney, leading the legal charge, and Ethan by my side, I was ready to reclaim everything they had taken. Rachel worked fast. She filed a lawsuit against Lucas for fraud, forgery, and theft. She also launched an investigation into his so-called business. What she uncovered was even worse than I had expected. Lucas hadn't just lost all the money. He had used it to fund illegal imports and shady deals. His entire operation was built on deception and law-breaking. And the best part? He had left behind mountains of evidence. One afternoon, as I sat in Rachel's office reviewing the case details, she leaned forward, her sharp eyes locked onto mine. Jessica, your parents knew everything, she said bluntly. They didn't just support Lucas, they helped cover up his crimes. I felt my stomach drop, but deep down, I wasn't surprised. I had stopped expecting anything from them the moment they betrayed me. Will they go down with him? I asked, my voice steady. Rachel nodded. If we push hard enough, yes. But I need to know, do you want to press charges against them too? I stared at the pile of documents in front of me. These were the people who had abandoned me in a hospital bed. The ones who never once checked if I was alive, who spent my money and laughed as if I had never existed. They had already chosen their side. I lifted my eyes to meet Rachel's.
Yes.
I want them all to pay. Rachel smiled grimly. Then let's make it happen. The legal battle began, and it didn't take long for everything to start crumbling around them. Lucas was the first to get served with legal notice. When he received the lawsuit, he stormed into Rachel's office, demanding to speak with me. I agreed, not because I wanted to hear his excuses, but because I wanted to watch him squirm. The moment he walked in, he wasn't the arrogant brother who had mocked me the day I came home. He looked disheveled, desperate, his cocky smirk replaced by panic. "Jessica, come on," he started, trying to sound casual, but his voice cracked. "This is all just a misunderstanding. We're family." I leaned back in my chair, studying him. "Funny. You didn't think about family when you sold my house, drained my accounts, and left me for dead." Lucas flinched. I was under pressure. "You have no idea how tough things were for me." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, you mean running an illegal business was stressful?" His face turned red. "I didn't mean for things to get this bad. I thought I could fix it before you came back." I scoffed. "You thought I wouldn't come back, Lucas. You thought you could steal everything and get away with it." He ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. "Jess, please, I messed up. But we can fix this. I'll get the money back. Just drop the case." I tilted my head. "Get the money back? Lucas, you lost everything. And even if you could fix it, why should I let you? You showed me exactly where I stand in your life. Now I'm showing you where you stand in mine." His eyes darkened. "You're serious about this?" "Dead serious." Lucas exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "You're making a mistake." "No, Lucas," I said coldly. "You did." He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I didn't flinch. 2 days later, the police got involved. With the evidence Rachel had provided, the authorities began investigating Lucas's business. What they found was enough to put him behind bars for a long time. He had not only forged my signature, but also committed multiple counts of fraud and financial crimes. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. The police showed up at my parents' house. I stood outside, watching as officers walked into the home where I had once spent my childhood. My mother and father came rushing out, confusion on their faces. "What is the meaning of this?" my father demanded. One of the officers turned to them. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter, you're being investigated for aiding and abetting fraud." My mother gasped. "That's ridiculous. We didn't do anything." I stepped forward then, meeting their shocked eyes. For the first time, I wasn't the daughter they dismissed. I was the woman standing against them. "You knew what Lucas was doing," I said, my voice emotionless. "And you supported him. Now you get to face the consequences." My father's face hardened. "Jessica, you don't have to do this." I let out a dry laugh. "Neither did you. But you did it anyway." My mother shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "We're your parents." "You stopped being my parents the day you sold me out." The officers proceeded with their work, gathering evidence, questioning them. My parents weren't arrested yet, but their involvement was undeniable. They wouldn't walk away from this without consequences. Later that night, Ethan and I sat in my restored beach house, mine again legally. "You did it," he said, watching me closely. I nodded, staring at the ocean waves in the distance. "Not yet, but I will." Ethan leaned forward. "How do you feel?" I thought about it. "Lighter," I admitted. "Like I can breathe again." He smiled. "Good. Because this isn't the end yet." I turned to him, determination in my eyes.
"No, Ethan."
"It's just the beginning." The trial against Lucas and my parents dragged on for weeks, but I never wavered. I had spent too much time being ignored, dismissed, and betrayed. Now I was finally in control, and I wasn't backing down. Lucas tried every trick in the book to escape the consequences. He played the victim, claimed he had been manipulated, blamed bad luck, even tried to guilt me into dropping the charges.
But it was too late for that.
The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, fake documents, illegal business dealings, and even recordings of his fraudulent transactions. One afternoon, as I sat in Rachel's office reviewing the final documents, she looked up at me with a small smirk. "He's running out of moves, Jessica. Lucas knows it's over." I nodded. He had destroyed himself. All I had done was shine a light on his crimes. The courtroom was silent the day the verdict was read. Lucas Carter, guilty on all charges. He was sentenced to several years in prison for fraud, forgery, and financial crimes. I didn't feel joy, just relief. But it wasn't over yet. My parents were next. Unlike Lucas, they hadn't committed direct fraud, but they had aided and abetted his crimes. The court found them complicit in covering up his illegal activities and benefiting from stolen money. Their punishment wasn't prison, but it was still severe, a massive financial penalty and a permanent mark on their records. I sat there, watching as my parents listened to the judge's ruling. They didn't look at me, didn't beg for forgiveness. Maybe they thought I was the monster for standing against them. But I didn't care anymore. When the case was over, I walked out of the courthouse with Ethan by my side. The air felt lighter. I had won, not just in court, but in life. I had reclaimed my home, my wealth, my name. But most importantly, I had reclaimed myself. The next day, my mother called me. It was the first time she had reached out since everything had happened. I stared at my phone, debating whether to answer. Finally, I picked up. "Jessica," she said softly. "I hope you're happy." Her words stung, but I didn't let them break me. "I am." She hesitated. "After everything we've been through, you still went through with it." I closed my eyes, gripping the phone. "You left me in that hospital, Mom. You stood by Lucas while he stole from me. You spent my money like I never existed." Silence. I sighed. "Tell me, if I had never come back, would you have even cared?" More silence. I nodded to myself. That's what I thought. She didn't try to defend herself. Maybe she knew there was nothing left to say. "I hope you have a good life, Jessica," she whispered before hanging up. I stared at the phone for a long time, but I didn't cry. There was nothing left to grieve. I had lost them long before I ever knew it. That evening, Ethan and I sat on the deck of my beach house, my home once again. The sun was setting, casting gold and pink streaks over the water. He studied me for a moment before speaking. "So, what now?" I smiled, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time.
"Peace."
"I move forward," I said simply. "Without them." Ethan nodded. "And if they ever try to come back?" I exhaled slowly. "Then they'll find out that some things can't be undone." We sat in comfortable silence, the waves crashing against the shore. The battle was over. And for the first time in my life, I was finally free.
My name is Jane. I am currently fulfilling my role as a professional while simultaneously raising my beloved only son, Paul. I have a long history of work experience and never intended to give up my career, even after getting married. Especially in my small but independent company, I have never faced a situation where my salary was reduced even after returning to work post-childbirth. During the leave I took for my son's childcare, I entrusted the management of the company to someone I trust, so I never worried about the management or progress of the business. However, the only issue that troubles me amidst my peaceful days is entirely different. It involves the presence of my mother-in-law. My husband Danny, our son Paul, and I lived together in a comfortable house. But soon after my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law suddenly imposed herself into our home. I assumed she would return to her own home after a short stay, but she chose to continue living with us without showing any intention to leave. When I gently inquired, "How long do you plan to stay with us?" her reaction was unexpected. She became emotional and exclaimed, "How could a heartless daughter-in-law attempt to drive out an old woman like me? After losing my beloved husband, being forced to live alone in my hometown is incredibly cruel." Danny, who had overheard part of the conversation, rushed to her side and comforted her. "Mom, it's okay. I would never kick you out, so please don't cry." After she calmed down, Danny took her to a different room. Once we were alone, he looked at me sharply and accused, "How can you say such horrible things to my mother? Do you not have a heart?" Misunderstandings might have arisen because Danny did not hear the whole conversation, but I had not forbidden my mother-in-law from living with us. As I explained, I was just asking how long you plan to stay, not that I wanted her to leave, he retorted. "Asking about the stay sounds like you want her to leave early. Can't you understand other people's feelings?" I regret using inappropriate words, but I never intended to drive her out. However, Danny, taking my mother-in-law's excessive reaction at face value, seemed to have decided I was in the wrong. I had no choice but to leave the situation as it was, making my daily life's small troubles deepen due to complex family relationships and the nuances of emotions involved. As a business owner, mother, and wife, I juggle these roles daily, trying to balance each. I wonder how long my mother-in-law plans to stay in our home. Asking her directly would likely result in her accusingly crying and appealing to Danny, so I hesitate to ask directly. Yet, when I contemplated how long she might stay, she unexpectedly announced, "I've sold my old house, so I'm moving all my belongings here," in front of the moving company truck parked outside our home, leaving me speechless. It was my day off, and I had planned to take Paul to the amusement park. However, Danny approached my mother-in-law, suggesting, "Then, today will be for sorting things out." This visit to the amusement park was a promise made long ago, eagerly anticipated by Paul, who looked disappointed when he asked, "Mom, what about the amusement park?" "Don't worry, Paul. As promised, we're going to the amusement park," I reassured him. Danny frowned and showed his dissatisfaction, asking, "Are you planning to leave the luggage unattended just for going to the amusement park?" I confidently argued, "Why should we change our plan for a family visit to the amusement park, breaking a promise to our child for sorting luggage?" I find such behavior unacceptable. The visit to the amusement park had been planned weeks in advance, with all preparations made for that day. Yet, I was not informed about the move, and when told today was the day for unpacking, I prioritized the plans already set. Nevertheless, my mother-in-law began to cry exaggeratedly, claiming Jane finds living with me uncomfortable. That's why she prioritizes her child over me. Hearing this, the movers, either feeling the situation was deadlocked or tired of my mother-in-law's exaggerated performance, quietly pointed out, "Unpacking can wait. Shouldn't promises to children take priority? And did you properly inform your wife about the move?" Upon hearing the calm comment, my mother-in-law blushed and felt ashamed. Danny, witnessing this development, did not defend her but merely looked at me intently. It appeared that Danny prioritized helping his mother with the move over our planned enjoyable family visit to the amusement park. In light of this situation, I decided to take my son, Paul, to the amusement park as previously planned. Unfortunately, this choice created a noticeable distance between my husband and me. One day, my mother-in-law said to me, "Jane, would you mind staying at home on your next day off?" I asked her why. "The truth is, I want to spend time with Paul, but since you always monopolize him, I hardly get the chance to play with him," she complained. This request came about a week after she had moved into our house without permission. She probably overheard my plans to take Paul to the shopping mall on my next day off. Suddenly, she forbade me from visiting the shopping mall, asserting, "Danny, Paul, and I will go to the shopping mall, so you should stay at home." Normally, there would be an option for the whole family to go out together, but excluding me seemed very selfish. Having witnessed her previous fake crying and such behavior, I could no longer trust her words. Therefore, considering it unthinkable to leave my child with someone I couldn't trust, I suggested, "Why don't we all go out together?" Although she looked displeased, she could not directly accuse me of being mean and reluctantly agreed. At the shopping mall, I began selecting clothes for Paul as originally planned, choosing slightly larger sizes considering children's rapid growth. My mother-in-law interrupted, "Why can't you choose the right size? This is the perfect size for Paul, bringing a size that fits him right now." Even when I explained, "Children grow fast," she argued, "when he grows, we can just buy new clothes. There's no need to save so much." I was dumbfounded by her short-sightedness. Selecting perfectly fitting clothes and buying new ones every time they become small is clearly a waste of money. We didn't have the financial leeway to spend money in such a way at our house. When I hesitated to purchase, Danny appeared and pointed out, I support the family financially. If you try to save, it makes me look stingy to others. Eventually, Danny covered the shopping expenses for my mother-in-law. Paul wore his new clothes comfortably for a while but soon complained, "These clothes are too tight now," and stopped wearing the clothes chosen by my mother-in-law. She seemed to have mixed feelings about this change. Out of necessity, I passed the outgrown clothes to a colleague's mother I had befriended at the daycare. This act was well received, making me feel happy. However, the existence of the daycare seemed undesirable to my mother-in-law. "Why do you need to leave Paul with others when I'm here? Moreover, continuing to work with a child is not good for their education," she criticized. I couldn't agree with this point, responding, "The reality is, we can't make ends meet without my job," but she just snorted, "How much do you even earn?" I'm confident Danny's earnings surpass that. We can manage without your help. Besides, you're probably a burden at work anyway. It seemed possible that Danny hadn't told his mother about my role as a business owner. His occasional bragging nature might have led him to hide such an important fact, perhaps to avoid letting his mother know that his wife earns more than he does. Faced with such a situation, I was deeply disappointed. "Actually, I earn more than Danny," I explained calmly yet firmly. My mother-in-law's response turned to anger. "How can you say such a thing? Looking down on your own husband and boldly declaring you earn more. Do you not respect your husband? You neglect your duties at home and boast about out-earning him. Don't you have any respect for him? Danny can manage perfectly fine without you," she exclaimed furiously. As her anger reached its peak and her voice echoed throughout the room, Danny appeared, asking, "What's going on here?" As if she had found reinforcements, my mother-in-law spoke with renewed vigor. "Hey, Danny. Actually, we wouldn't be troubled without Jane, right? It should just be you, me, and Paul living happily together. Don't you think our life is being constrained because Jane is here?" She said. "What? Yeah," Danny hesitantly, but eventually, showed his agreement. "Then the best thing to do is to divorce," she continued, and shockingly, she immediately took out a divorce form. It seemed she had wanted our divorce for some time. I no longer had any expectations for a father who prioritizes his mother over his child. However, I had no intention of giving up custody of my child. "It seems my presence is entirely unwelcome. If you wish for a family of 3, then I shall leave this house," I responded calmly. And without hesitation, I signed the divorce form she proposed. Despite forcing me to cancel our amusement park plans and insisting on helping with the packing, as soon as I started preparing to move out, she took Danny on a trip. Though she invited Paul to a trip, he had seen her unpleasant behavior towards me and still resented her for nearly causing us to miss our amusement park trip. He chose to stay with me, declining her invitation. Thus, Danny and she ended up going on a trip alone. I took this opportunity to move mine and Paul's belongings to a new home. I also left a letter stating that the responsibility for future rent payments, custody, and property division would be Danny's, as outlined through a lawyer. Returning from a week-long trip, Danny and his mother, unaware of the situation, contacted me surprisingly quickly. "Jane, why did you take Paul with you? Mom is worried. I'm supposed to have custody, aren't I?" he accused. It became clear at that moment that Danny had not yet read the letter I left. "Please read the letter on the living room table," I said. Danny replied, "Oh, Mom said she would look at it first. I've outlined that you'll be taking on $4,000 rent responsibility, that I will not transfer Paul's custody, and that we'll discuss property division through a lawyer," I explained. "Rent is $4,000, he exclaimed in surprise. He knew the housing was rented and that I had been making the payments, but he was unaware of the specific amount. I couldn't believe he was unaware of the rent amount while managing our finances. Indeed, this house was a rental, costing a hefty $4,000 monthly, and initially, I was against living here. However, Danny was adamant about living in this house, and eventually, we rented it according to his wishes. As a president, you should have no problem with this level of rent, right? He said, leaving the burden to me. As a result, I ended up paying $4,000 rent monthly, with Danny covering other living expenses. However, he was careless with money and prone to spending impulsively. There was an instance at the shopping mall where, after shopping without calculating, my mother-in-law ended up short at the register and reluctantly called me for help. It seems this mother and son lack financial management skills, often spending on personal luxuries before covering living expenses. I had to cover the shortfall each time. I had savings for Paul's future and was putting my entire salary into our household, leaving me with very little personal spending money. Recently, I also had to cover the expenses and pocket money for his mother, putting us in a financially tight situation. But with the divorce finalized, I am relieved from the burden of $4,000 monthly rent. Registering the house under his name, which was done for his vanity, turned out to be fortunate. This allows me to withdraw from the financial carelessness of the two, bringing significant mental relief. There's no way I can pay that amount. You've always been paying, continue doing so, he pleaded. Why should I pay the rent for a house I no longer live in? I was driven out by your mother. The divorce is finalized, and there's no longer any connection between me and that house. Therefore, I have no obligation to pay the rent, I counted. So, please help me, Denny begged pathetically, but then it seemed his mother grabbed his phone, and her voice came through. We can pay the rent without you. Even the amount you claim to have been paying is manageable for Danny, she asserted. With a take-home pay of only $2,000, how do you plan to pay the monthly rent of $4,000? Are you going to use magic? That would be remarkable, I said sarcastically. What? Came the reply. It seemed that my mother-in-law genuinely misunderstood Danny to be financially well off, probably because she saw him paying during their shopping trips, leading her to believe he was wealthy. I was just dumbfounded by this fact. I thought it was impossible for Danny, with his take-home pay of $2,000 and almost no savings, to afford the rent. Moreover, expecting them to raise a child healthily in their financially unstable situation would be difficult. Even without Paul's consent, custody would naturally fall to me, as Danny and my mother-in-law couldn't provide a suitable environment for raising a child. So, what should we do then? They were bewildered. If you can't pay the rent, you have no choice but to change your living situation. You'll have to notify the real estate agent to cancel your lease. The longer you delay, the more you owe in rent. I urged them to act swiftly. My words were met with, "Shut up. I know that much," from my mother-in-law, who clearly had no room for fake tears in this situation. After hanging up, I completed the move to a new apartment with Paul. This apartment is close to my workplace and conveniently located near shops and medical facilities. About a month after the divorce, my mother-in-law and Denny showed up at my company. They began loudly demanding to see me at the entrance, as reported by the receptionist. I was out having lunch with Paul at the time but hurried back with him upon hearing they were causing a commotion. Fortunately, there's a daycare within the company, so I could bring Paul inside. Seeing my mother-in-law and Danny waiting at the reception was a surprise. I was puzzled by their visit since the lawyer had reported they hadn't responded to our discussions. "Jane, can't you just come back home? We understand you were making the payments. Please stop being stubborn," my mother-in-law pleaded with tears, thinking her act would work on someone other than her son. She clearly intended to paint me as the villain. Witnessing her behavior, Danny joined in. "What do you mean by getting a lawyer involved? This is a family matter. Surely, Paul would prefer his parents to be together. However, a father who chooses his mother over his son would only sadden the child." I sighed and replied, "Now that we're divorced and essentially strangers, please communicate through my legal representative for anything." Danny, realizing he wouldn't get through to me directly, turned to Paul with my mother-in-law. "Hey, Paul, you want to be with your dad and grandma, right? Aren't you lonely when your mom is always busy with work?" Frightened by their words, Paul hid behind me and cried out loudly, "I hate you both because you're mean." His crying had a more significant impact on the people around than my mother-in-law's fake tears. Soon after, other employees came and escorted Danny and my mother-in-law outside, to my relief. Later, after notifying them through the lawyer that any further company visits or following us would be reported to the police, they quieted down. Subsequently, Danny and my mother-in-law abandoned their $4,000 a month housing for a dilapidated apartment. Danny's fate took a darker turn as he had previously bragged about living in a luxurious home beyond our means at his workplace. Fearing the revelation of their move to a rundown apartment, he quit his job without consulting his mother, leading to her fury upon discovering his sudden job resignation. As a result, they started working to earn an income, frequently blaming each other for abandoning me and Paul, resulting in constant arguments. Despite this, they are trying to make ends meet, sending child support monthly while working hard. Meanwhile, my business is thriving, and despite the absence of his father, Paul is growing up to be a well-rounded boy. Even without an unfit father, I am determined to raise him well. Your presence is no longer needed. Really? How long do you plan to stay here? Leave this house quickly. You incompetent leech living off the money Steve left behind. Disappear. You're in the way. What? Can I really leave? Won't you regret this later? Of course. Don't make me repeat myself. I am Emma, 34 years old, working in the medical field. I met my husband, Steve, a 37-year-old surgeon, 2 years ago at the hospital we both worked at, and we got married. Upon marrying, I quit my job to focus on being a homemaker as per my husband's wish. Currently, I am 5 months pregnant and suffering from severe morning sickness. My husband is a respected surgeon, admired by his peers for his skill. He is kind, gentle, and loved by patients and hospital staff alike. Our marriage is strong, and he is incredibly supportive, actively helping with household chores without a single complaint. Despite his demanding job, his dedication to our family is something I am deeply grateful for. The only concern I have is related to my in-laws. Hey, Emma, I have a request. I'd like to live with my parents and my sister Abby. My dad needs care, and I want to support them as much as possible. It will also reduce the burden on my mom. Plus, with a baby on the way, having extra hands will be helpful for you, and it might make it easier for you to return to work. What do you think? That sounds good to me. I'm okay with it. Steve's family is kind, and if I can help take care of your father, it will lighten the load on your mom and Abby. Thank you, Emma. That means a lot to me. My mother-in-law has always been kind to me, and my sister-in-law Abby left a good impression during our family's meeting and our wedding, so I was confident we could build a good relationship. Thus, upon getting married, I started living with my in-laws and sister-in-law Abby. However, this shared living situation would soon change my life. One day, not long after we started living together, I was lying in bed in my room, still suffering from severe morning sickness, when I was called to the living room by my mother-in-law. My husband had left for work early in the morning, and my father-in-law was resting in another room, so it was just me, my mother-in-law, and sister-in-law Abby in the living room. My mother-in-law, usually calm, looked stern. Feeling tense, she suddenly spoke up. Emma, you're hardly managing the household chores, and yet you're lazing around in bed? Since you're not paying rent, I want you to contribute $5,000 to the household every month. This was the start of an incomprehensible discussion. I'm sorry, I've been suffering from continuous morning sickness and have hardly been able to get out of bed. I feel terrible for relying so much on you and Abby for household chores, but I thought I was contributing enough each month. Well, enough. You think a mere $2,000 is enough? We're letting you live here because we thought you'd help with the housework and take care of our father. You're not helping at all. Why did my son even choose someone like you as his wife? There's no need to say something so harsh. When I was young, regardless of morning sickness or anything else, I dedicated myself to my new family. You need to put in more effort. And I'm tired of taking care of that man. That's why I suggested to Steve that we all live together. Steve is a doctor, so $5,000 a month shouldn't be a big deal, right? Well then, I'm counting on you. We're going out for a bit, so take care of the housework and take care of our father. Useless sister-in-law. Saying this, the two of them left. I was shocked by their sudden change of attitude, as I thought we were getting along well. despite not feeling well, I couldn't just sit around. So I managed to suppress my discomfort from the morning sickness and started cleaning, doing laundry, and preparing meals for my father-in-law. My father-in-law, though unable to move his lower body, did not show signs of dementia and communicated well. He seemed to feel guilty about me taking care of everything alone, especially considering my pregnancy. I'm truly sorry that you have to take on everything, Emma. Considering the baby and your own health, I wish it wasn't so burdensome for you. It's okay. Steve is very supportive, so I don't feel burdened at all. Besides, I enjoy the time I spend talking with you. I'm really grateful, my father-in-law said, tears welling up in his eyes, expressing his gratitude. That evening, when my husband returned home, I told him about the demand from my mother-in-law and Abby for a monthly contribution of $5,000. However, I didn't mention their change in attitude, not wanting to worry him. $5,000, huh? Understood. Well, we are living here and my parents are living on their pension. Abby also has a regular work and doesn't have a stable income. My husband agreed to the monthly payment of $5,000 without hesitation, understanding the situation. Since my husband was okay with it, I reluctantly agreed as well. Then, one day, I received a call that my husband had collapsed at the hospital while at work. Worried sick, I managed to calm my panic enough to find out which hospital he was taken to, and immediately called a taxi to rush there. Steve was already unconscious during the transport, and tears threatened to spill in the taxi. My mind was filled with pessimistic thoughts, hoping against hope that he would be okay. But, despite my wishes, Steve passed away shortly after we arrived at the hospital from an acute heart attack. He had left the house that morning with his usual kind smile, making it hard to accept the reality. Steve was only 37 years old. He had his whole life ahead of him, passionate about his work and excited to become a father soon. The thought of not being able to introduce our child to his or her father left me sobbing beside his body. Time passed, and my mother-in-law and Abby arrived at the hospital. My father-in-law had to stay home, so a helper was arranged urgently. Oh, I can't believe this. My dear Steve, why a heart attack? Really? This is all Emma's fault. Emma, if you had noticed Steve's health issues sooner, this tragedy wouldn't have happened. You're a disaster. Mom is right. The reason my brother died is because you came into our house. I'll never forgive you for taking him away. I'm truly sorry. Having just lost my husband, my heart was too broken to argue with them. I could only apologize. Maybe it was all my fault. If only I had noticed something was wrong with Steve sooner, he might still be alive. I was tormented by this thought for a while. Eventually, the funeral was held. Many of Steve's friends and colleagues came to say their goodbyes. I felt a profound loss and sorrow from the respect people had for my husband. But I knew I couldn't grieve forever. I have to become stronger for the sake of our child that's about to be born. I resolved. However, my resolve was quickly shattered by my in-laws' words. Look, Emma, just because Steve has passed away doesn't mean you're thinking of going back to your parents' house, right? Well, I'm expecting soon, and the morning sickness hasn't ended, so I might return to my parents' house a bit earlier. What? If you go back to your parents, what will happen to the daily routine here? Who will take care of Dad? You think you can just leave irresponsibly just because my brother died? As for taking care of Dad, hiring a helper could lessen the burden. Hiring a helper? What are you thinking? As long as you're here, there's no need for outside help. That's a waste of money. Angered by their words, I responded, may I remind you, my mother-in-law is almost always home, and Abby only works 3 days a week on a non-regular basis. Aren't you two perfectly capable of handling the household and taking care of Dad? My mother-in-law retorted, I'm busy with community activities and hobbies. I don't have time to do housework, let alone care for him. She spends her time at home just watching TV and lounging around, using any excuse to shift all responsibility onto me. On my days off from my part-time job, I'm busy looking for a marriage partner. I can't spare any effort or money on beauty treatments to find a handsome, high-earning man. Oh, I just don't have enough time. Unlike you, who can stay home all day? Abby, significantly overweight and far from the beauty ideal she claimed, bafflingly exuded confidence from nowhere. And Emma, it's not an exaggeration to say Steve's death is your fault. So, you'll continue to take care of the household and Dad, and will also need the same $5,000 a month for living expenses. We've heard about the savings Steve left behind, so paying shouldn't be an issue, right? But I don't have an income right now, and with the baby coming, expenses will increase. I wanted to save Steve's money for our child's future. Oh, but is that child really Steve's? Could it be someone else's? That's really funny. Really? Emma, you're so vulgar. Then it's even more unthinkable to use Steve's money for a child that might not be his. Please wait. This child is indeed Steve's. It's terrible to say such things. But realizing arguing was futile, I gave up on going back to my parents and resigned myself to contributing $5,000 a month for living expenses, continuing the household chores and caring for my father-in-law. It seems excessive for a family of 4 to need that much, especially with pension income. Though I have some savings, I didn't want to dip into the inheritance Steve left, preferring to save it for our child's future. Moreover, returning to my parents would leave my father-in-law without proper care. If help or support isn't an option, going back isn't either. My belly is getting heavier and it's tough, but it seems like I have no choice but to handle the household chores and caregiving on my own. I managed the household and caregiving tasks as best as I could, using delivery services for grocery shopping to keep it unnoticed by my mother-in-law and Abby. One day, while preparing a meal for my father-in-law, an incident occurred. Hey, Emma, can I talk to you for a moment? There's something I need to tell you. Yes, what is it? At that moment, my mother-in-law and Abby were out, and it was just my father-in-law and me at home. I wanted to tell you something while they're not around. Please listen to this. He handed me a voice recorder, and the moment I pressed play, I was shocked. Is this my mother-in-law and Abby's voices? What are they saying? I can't believe this. I heard a conversation between my mother-in-law and Abby. I felt a growing outrage towards them, and it felt like something inside me broke. Unforgivable? Absolutely not. From there, my father-in-law and I devised a plan, and I was determined to carry it out. We waited for the night to come. When my mother-in-law and Abby returned home happily, I made them an offer. Mother, Abby, as a token of my gratitude, how about a trip just for the two of you? Of course, my father-in-law and I will stay here. A trip. Wonderful. I want it to be abroad. Emma, that's a great idea. How about inviting 2 friends and all of us going to Europe? Of course, it's fine to invite your friends. Why don't you take a little break for about 2 weeks? Emma, you do come up with good suggestions sometimes. The thought of getting away from this depressing daughter-in-law and that old man, what an unexpected happiness. As a result, they planned a 2-week trip to Europe, including their friends, 1 month later, without suspecting our plan. Then, the day of their trip arrived. After seeing off the 2 who left in high spirits, I immediately started preparing to leave this home. Being in the later stages of pregnancy and unable to carry heavy items, I called my mother to help me. After telling my parents everything, they expressed their anger towards my mother-in-law and Abby but warmly welcomed me to come back home. Then, after completing the moving preparations, I expressed my gratitude to my father-in-law. Though it was for a short time, I am very grateful for your care. After Steve passed away, you were the only one who always spoke to me with warmth. I am the one who should be grateful, Emma, for your caregiving. I'll be living in a care facility from now on, so don't worry. All that's left is to wait for those 2 to receive their just desserts. 2 weeks passed, and the day they returned from their trip came. While I was peacefully staying at my parents' house, my phone rang. My mother-in-law's name appeared on the screen. When I answered, she demanded I return home immediately, so I reluctantly agreed. Welcome back, Mother. Did you enjoy your trip to Europe? Enjoyed it? That's not the point, Emma. We were happy to go on the trip you gifted us, but why are we being billed for it? There's a bill for $20,000. I thought it was lucky it only came to $20,000 for 4 of you. I was expecting it to easily exceed $30,000 with such luxurious accommodations. What are you talking about? Boyfriend? We just invited some friends from the neighborhood, and it was just the 4 of us. Oh, is that so? But I have evidence here. Please have a look at the envelope on the living room table. My mother-in-law and Abby were then confronted with a report from a detective. What is this? You tricked us by hiring a detective, you sly woman. No, it wasn't me who hired the detective. It was my father-in-law. What Dad did? Yes, it was actually my father-in-law who had requested the investigation. One day, he grew suspicious of my mother-in-law and Abby's behavior and installed a hidden microphone in the living room to eavesdrop on their conversations. Listen, Mom. Last night, I went on a date with a charming man who earns over $1 million a year. He's married, but he showed a lot of interest in me and came on to me strongly. I ended up not coming home until morning. I'll make him divorce his wife and take him for myself. That's wonderful, Abby. Go ahead and get that man for yourself. I also hope my wealthy lover will divorce his spouse soon and become mine alone. Then, eventually, we'll leave this place and start a luxurious life. In fact, they were involved with married men and planning to leave my father-in-law behind and move out of the house. Furious with this revelation, my father-in-law and I planned the trip as a strategy. He expected them to bring their affairs along on the trip and hired a detective to investigate during their absence. The investigation revealed that the friends accompanying my mother-in-law and Abby on the trip were, in fact, their extramarital lovers. Well, now that it's out, there's nothing else to do but to give up. I'm going to divorce your father and kick that man out of the house. And you, Emma, are no longer needed here. Really? How long do you plan to stay? Leave this house immediately. Leave, you worthless person living off the money Steve left behind. What? Can I really leave? Won't you regret this later? Of course. Don't make me repeat myself. Also, regarding the cost of the trip, you will be bearing it yourself. While I suggested the trip, I never mentioned it would be a gift. Humph, if it's about $20,000, I'll just have my wealthy lover pay for it. Is that so? Additionally, my father-in-law has already moved to a facility. Thank you for everything. Goodbye, and please do as you wish. Thus, I returned to my parents' home, feeling refreshed. After spending some peaceful time at home, one day, my mother-in-law and Abby unexpectedly showed up at the entrance. Emma, we apologize for our behavior up to now. Please come back, sister. I sincerely apologize for everything I've said and done. We really want you back. Oh, what brings both of you here? Why has it come to this? Our relationships outside were exposed, and the spouses are demanding a large compensation from us. I live on a pension, and Abby is in irregular employment with little savings. We don't know how to handle this. In fact, my father-in-law had sent the detective's report to the families of the lovers, resulting in a massive demand for compensation from them. Additionally, they were being sued for compensation for infidelity by my father-in-law as well. Moreover, we haven't settled the $20,000 for the trip yet. Could you possibly share Steve's inheritance with us? I categorically refuse. You treated me like a servant all this time. I cannot forgive you. Besides, the monthly living expenses of $5,000 were being paid out of my own savings, not from Steve's inheritance. What? You had that much in savings? I thought you worked in medical administration at a hospital. No, my daughter is a distinguished doctor at our hospital. My father, who is the director of a large hospital, appeared and informed them of the reality. Yes, I am his daughter and was working as a surgeon, recognized for my achievements and expected to succeed him as the director of the hospital. Steve and I were united by a romance that began at the same workplace. Recognizing the situation, my mother-in-law said, "Then, all the more reason we want you to come back, Emma. The future director of the hospital, please save us from our plight. We're going to suffer under debt. Please help us." Sister-in-law, they pleaded with tears. However, I firmly refused and securely locked the door. The commotion led to a neighbor calling the police, and they were eventually taken away in a police car. Later, my mother-in-law and Abby were demanded to pay compensation by the spouses of their lovers. My mother-in-law also had to pay compensation to my father-in-law. They were also reminded to pay for the trip, resulting in significant debt. The scandal spread throughout the neighborhood, forcing them to move. They now live in a small apartment, juggling multiple jobs to pay off their debts. A deserved outcome. As for my father-in-law, his divorce was successfully finalized, and he enjoys a stress-free life in a care facility. As for me, I safely gave birth to a girl and am living a fulfilling life with the support of my parents. Next month, I plan to return to work, placing my daughter in daycare. I intend to carry on Steve's legacy, moving forward as both a doctor and a mother.
The smell of burning toast yanks me from sleep, and for a moment I'm disoriented, thinking Jake's making breakfast again. Then reality crashes in. Jake hasn't made me breakfast in 8 months. He's probably making breakfast for Lily now. I stumble to the kitchen, cursing as I rescue the blackened bread from my temperamental toaster. The autumn sun streams through my apartment windows, catching the diamond on my left hand, the one I still can't bring myself to remove. 5 years of marriage reduced to a sparkly reminder of everything I've lost. My phone buzzes. It's Valerie, my one remaining ally at Townsend Corp. "Vienna, you need to see this. Check your email now." I pull up my inbox and there it is. The company-wide announcement complete with a photo that makes my stomach lurch. Jake and Lily beaming at their surprise weekend wedding. My husband, ex-husband, and my best friend of 15 years, looking like they've just won the lottery of life. "Did you know?" Valerie's voice is gentle. "About them?" "No?" The word comes out as a whisper. I knew they'd been spending time together after everything. Lily said she was just helping him through the divorce. I laugh, but it sounds hollow even to my ears. Guess she was helping herself to my husband. "There's more," Valerie says. "Keep reading." I scroll down, my hands shaking. Beneath the wedding announcement is a promotion notice. Effective immediately, Lily Townsend now, is being appointed Chief Strategy Officer. My old position. The one I built from nothing over 12 years before Jake orchestrated my voluntary resignation during our divorce. "The retreat's tomorrow," Valerie continues. "They'll both be there. The whole executive team will. The annual leadership retreat. I'd forgotten. Last year, I'd led the opening keynote. This year, I wasn't even invited. "I can't avoid them forever," I say, more to myself than Valerie. "Might as well face them now." "Vienna," Valerie hesitates. "Maybe you shouldn't." "I'm still a shareholder," I cut in. "I have every right to be there." After hanging up, I stand in front of my closet, pushing past the comfortable work-from-home clothes I've lived in since leaving Townsend. At the back hangs the red power suit I wore the day I closed the Morrison deal, the biggest acquisition in company history. Lily had been so proud of me that day. We'd celebrated with champagne in my office, plotting our rise through the corporate ranks together. "We'll run this place someday," she'd said, clinking her glass against mine. The dynamic duo. Some duo we turned out to be. The suit still fits perfectly. I spend extra time on my makeup, erasing any trace of the sleepless nights and tears. The woman in the mirror looks powerful, controlled. No one would guess she's breaking inside. The retreat venue is a luxury resort an hour outside the city. I time my arrival perfectly, late enough to miss the morning mingling, early enough to slip into the back of the main presentation room just as Jake takes the stage. He looks good. Of course he does. He's practically glowing as he welcomes everyone, making the same terrible jokes that used to make me groan affectionately. A few rows ahead, Lily sits in my old seat, nodding along. She's wearing the Cartier bracelet I noticed on her wrist months ago. She'd said it was a gift from her parents. Now I wonder if it was from Jake all along. My presence creates a ripple of whispers. Jake falters mid-sentence when he spots me, but recovers quickly. Too quickly, like he's been practicing for this moment. After his speech during the coffee break, Lily approaches. She's wearing the confident smile I taught her to use in tough negotiations. "Vienna, I'm so glad you came." She reaches for a hug like nothing has changed. I step back. "Congratulations," I say coolly. "On everything. I wanted to tell you myself, but it all happened so fast." Her smile slips slightly. You understand, don't you? Sometimes life just takes unexpected turns. Over her shoulder, I see Jake watching us, his expression unreadable. Lily follows my gaze and something flickers across her face. Guilt. Fear. Before I can process it, she's composed again. We should catch up properly, she says. There's so much to discuss. Yes, I agree, matching her smile with one of my own. So much. She turns to leave but pauses. That suit, isn't that what you wore for the Morrison deal? Good memory. Those were simpler times, weren't they? There's an edge to her voice I've never heard before. Back when we thought we knew what we wanted, she walks away, leaving me with the distinct feeling that I've missed something crucial. That beneath the perfect facade of their fairy tale romance and corporate success lies a story I don't yet understand. But I will. Oh, I will. The rain hasn't stopped for 3 days. I'm staring out my home office window when the email arrives. Its cheerful subject line a stark contrast to its contents. Organizational restructuring. Important updates. My hands don't shake this time. Maybe I've been expecting this since the retreat, since I saw the way Jake and Lily exchanged glances when they thought no one was watching. The message is corporate poetry, flowery language about streamlining operations and optimizing leadership structures. But the meaning is clear. My consulting contract with Townsend Corp is terminated, effective immediately. Valerie calls before I've finished reading. I just heard. Those bastards. Tell me what's really happening in there. I keep my voice steady, professional, like I'm discussing someone else's life falling apart. It's worse than we thought. Lily's been meeting with the board privately. She's dismantling your entire division, piece by piece. Everyone you hired, every project you started, she's either killing it or claiming it as her own vision. I think of Mia, the bright-eyed intern I'd mentored last summer. Of Paisley, who'd worked miracles to land us the Asian market expansion. What about the team? Some are being relocated, others. Valerie's silence says enough. My throat tightens. She's destroying everything I built. There's something else. Valerie lowers her voice. I overheard Jake and Lily arguing in his office yesterday. She was upset about some documents he wanted her to sign. Something about transferring shares before the quarter ends. A memory surfaces Jake 2 years ago explaining his elaborate plan to restructure company ownership. I'd thought he was protecting our future. Now I wonder if he'd been plotting my exit even then. My doorbell rings, interrupting my thoughts. Through the peephole I see Lily, rain-soaked and looking nothing like the polished executive from the retreat. I know you're in there, Vienna. Her voice is thick. Please, 5 minutes. I should ignore her. Instead, I open the door. She steps inside, water dripping onto my hardwood floors. I had to explain in person. About the contract. Save it. I cross my arms. I'm sure the board had very compelling reasons. It wasn't my decision. She runs a hand through her wet hair. Jake insisted. He said keeping you connected to the company was too risky. Risky? I laugh. I built half that company. You don't understand. There are things happening, decisions being made. She stops, biting her lip. I never wanted any of this. Really? Because from where I'm standing, you've gotten everything you wanted. My husband, my job, my life. Your life, her eyes flash. You think I wanted to be Jake's backup plan? His consolation prize after you? She cuts herself off. After I what? Nothing, forget it. She moves toward the door, then pauses. Check your old files. The Morrison deal documentation. There's something you need to see. Before I can respond, she's gone, leaving only wet footprints and questions. I spend the next 3 hours digging through archived emails and digital folders. At first, I find nothing unusual in the Morrison acquisition paperwork, just standard contracts and due diligence reports. Then I notice something odd. The final ownership structure doesn't match my original proposal. Somewhere between my draft and the executed version, key percentages shifted. Control of certain assets moved between shell companies I don't recognize. My phone rings. Unknown number. Vienna. The voice is familiar but unexpected. It's Andy. Andy Gibson. We met at the Thompson conference last year. Andy Gibson, the venture capitalist who'd tried to poach me for his firm before everything fell apart. I heard about your contract, he continues, and I've been watching Townsend's recent moves. Very interesting patterns emerging. I think of Lily's cryptic warning, the modified documents. What kind of patterns? The kind that could be very valuable to someone with the right insight. Someone like you. He pauses. Have dinner with me tomorrow. We should discuss your future. After we hang up, I sit in the growing darkness, listening to the rain. On my laptop screen, financial statements and ownership diagrams glow like a puzzle waiting to be solved. Jake always said I was brilliant at seeing patterns others missed, at finding leverage in unexpected places. Time to prove him right. I open my safe and pull out a small red notebook, the one where I used to track my most sensitive business insights. The last entry is from 8 months ago, the day before Jake asked for a divorce. On a fresh page, I write a single sentence. To destroy a castle, first find its foundation. The scent of espresso mingles with expensive cologne as Andy slides into the booth across from me. Le Petit Bistrot, his choice, private enough for secrets, public enough to seem innocent. You look better than at the retreat, he says, studying me over his menu. You were there? Back row, watching Jake's performance. His smile is sharp. And yours. The waiter arrives. Andy orders for both of us in perfect French, then pulls out his phone, sliding it across the table. On the screen is a financial news article about Townsend Corp's upcoming merger talks. Notice anything interesting? He asks. I scan the piece, my pulse quickening as I spot it. The timing of the merger discussions aligns perfectly with when Jake first suggested our divorce, when he started spending late nights at the office with Lily. They needed me gone before this went public, I say slowly. But why? Because you would have seen what they're trying to hide. Andy leans forward. The merger's a cover. They're really preparing for a hostile takeover of Morrison Industries. The same company from my biggest deal. The acquisition that made my career and apparently planted the seeds of its destruction. That's why they modified the original ownership structure, I murmur. They were laying groundwork, even then. Smart girl. Andy's eyes gleam. Here's the interesting part. I've been quietly buying Townsend shares, with your insider knowledge and my capital. He lets the implication hang. Our food arrives. I push my salmon around the plate, mind racing. What's your angle? Maybe I just enjoy watching arrogant men fall, he shrugs. Or maybe Morrison's board would be very grateful to whoever prevents this takeover. Grateful enough to offer a certain displaced executive a fresh start. My phone buzzes. Valerie. I excuse myself to take the call in the restaurant's elegant bathroom. Where are you? She demands. Lily's been asking questions about your old files. She seems scared. I'm having dinner with Andy Gibson. Silence. Then, be careful, Vienna. Andy's not exactly known for his loyalty. Neither was my best friend. I catch my reflection in the mirror, cheeks flushed, eyes bright with possibility. Besides, what do I have to lose? Back at the table, Andy's typing on his laptop. Just sent you some documents, proof of what they're planning. Look them over tonight. And if I'm interested? We move fast. I have other investors ready. He closes his laptop. But first, you'll need to talk to someone. Get some additional leverage. Who? Ria, my sister. He writes an address on his napkin. She handles certain sensitive aspects of my business. Meet her tomorrow. Later that night, I pore over Andy's documents. The takeover plan is brilliant in its complexity and familiar. I recognize Jake's strategic fingerprints, but there's something else. Something that reminds me of late-night strategy sessions with Lily, when we'd dream up elaborate corporate maneuvers over wine and takeout. My doorbell rings. Again, Lily stands there, but this time she's stone sober and angry. Are you insane? She burst past me. Having dinner with Andy Gibson? Do you know what Jake will do if... If what? I step closer. If he finds out I know about the Morrison takeover, she pales. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Then explain it to me. You owe me that much. I can't, her voice cracks. God, Vienna, I wish. She stops, composing herself. Just stay away from Andy, please, for your own safety. Like you stayed away from Jake? She flinches as if I'd slapped her. That was different. I never meant... It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? Instead of answering, she pulls something from her bag. A USB drive. Everything you need to know is here. But Vienna? Her eyes meet mine. Once you look at this, there's no going back. After she leaves, I stare at the drive for a long time. Finally, I plug it in. The files are encrypted, but I recognize the format. It's the same encryption Jake and I used for our most confidential documents. He'd taught me the password structure himself, late one night in bed. My fingers hover over the keyboard as I remember his words. The best passwords are things only you would know, moments that changed everything. I type in the date of our first kiss. Access denied. The date we met. Access denied. I close my eyes, thinking, what moment really changed everything? Then I know. I type in the date of the Morrison deal closing. The files open, and suddenly I understand why Jake wanted me gone, why Lily looks haunted, why Andy's really interested. This isn't just about a takeover. It's about what happened 3 years ago when we all made choices we couldn't undo. And now those choices are coming back to destroy us all. The city roars 20 stories below as I wait in Andy's sister's office. Rhea Gibson looks nothing like her brother. Where he's all polished charm, she's raw energy, sprawled in her chair with combat boots on her desk. So you're the one who made my brother cancel his vacation, she grins. The files were enlightening, weren't they? My hands clench around my coffee cup. How did you know about the USB drive? Please. She waves dismissively. Lily's been my client for months. Who do you think helped her encrypt those files? The coffee turns bitter in my mouth. You're working with Lily? I work with anyone who pays. Rhea leans forward. But right now, I'm more interested in working with you. Because you found something in those files that even Lily doesn't know about, didn't you? She's right. Hidden in the documentation was evidence of a second set of transactions, ones that occurred right after the Morrison deal closed. Money moved through offshore accounts, ultimately landing in a trust controlled by Jake's family. The Morrison acquisition wasn't just business, I say quietly. It was personal. Jake's family had been trying to take control of Morrison for generations. My deal finally gave them their chance. And you never suspected? I thought I was just good at my job. I laugh hollowly. Turns out I was just a convenient tool, the ambitious wife who could make deals happen without asking too many questions. Now you're asking questions. Rhea's eyes gleam. But are you ready for the answers? She pulls up documents on her tablet, bank statements, emails, phone records. A web of connections between Jake's family and key players at Morrison, stretching back decades. Your husband's been playing a very long game, she says. And Lily, she's not just his new wife, she's his family's insurance policy. What do you mean? Her father sits on Morrison's board. The marriage ensures his cooperation in the upcoming takeover. Rhea pauses. She didn't tell you that part, did she? My mind spins. Lily's father, the quiet man who'd attended our wedding, who'd always seemed so proud of our friendship. Another piece of the manipulation. Why are you showing me this? Because unlike my brother, I believe in informed decisions. Rhea closes her tablet. Andy wants to use you to stop the takeover, but he doesn't care about collateral damage, about who gets hurt. Like Paisley, who still works at Townsend. Like Mia, the intern who reminds me so much of myself at that age. My phone buzzes, speaking of Paisley. Her message makes my blood freeze. Emergency board meeting called for next week. They're moving faster than expected. I need to protect my people, I tell Rhea, before everything explodes. Then you'll need this. She hands me a thumb drive. Contact details for everyone involved in the original Morrison deal, including some who might be interested in preventing history from repeating. I stand to leave, but she catches my arm. Vienna, remember, Lily came to you with those files for a reason. Maybe she's not just Jake's insurance policy. Maybe she's looking for insurance of her own. That afternoon, I meet Valerie in a coffee shop far from the office. Her face is drawn with worry. They're pushing people out, she says. Anyone who might question the takeover. Paisley's being transferred to the Singapore office next month. Unless we stop it. I show her the thumb drive. I need you to help me contact these people carefully, through secure channels only. She studies me. This is dangerous, Vienna. If Jake finds out, he already took everything from me. I grip my coffee cup tighter. What else can he do? He can destroy your reputation. Make sure you never work in this industry again. Maybe. I think of Lily's haunted eyes, of Ria's revelations. But I'm done being afraid of what Jake might do. It's time to show him what I can do. My phone lights up with a text from an unknown number. Meet tonight, 8 p.m., the place where it all started. I know exactly where. The small bar where Jake first introduced me to Lily, 15 years ago. Where our friendship began, before ambition and betrayal poisoned everything. I have to go, I tell Valerie. But first, I need you to do something. Get a message to Paisley. Tell her to delay accepting that transfer. Things are about to change. Walking to my car, I call Andy. I'm in, but we do this my way. No collateral damage. Whatever you say, boss. His smile is audible. Just remember, once we start, there's no going back. I think of the young woman I was, celebrating my friendship with Lily in that bar, of the wife I became believing in Jake's love, of the executive I am now, finally seeing the whole board clearly. Good, I say, because going back isn't an option anymore. The bar looks exactly the same. Dark wood, brass fixtures, the perpetual smell of lime and whiskey. Lily's already there, perched on the same stool where we first met, when Jake introduced his two favourite women and unknowingly set this whole tragedy in motion. I wasn't sure you'd come, she says as I slide onto the stool beside her. I almost didn't. I order a Manhattan, my drink from simpler days. But I want to hear you explain why your father's involvement in Morrison wasn't worth mentioning. She flinches. How did you... Does it matter? What matters is you're still lying, still playing both sides. You think I wanted this? Her voice cracks. My father's dying, Vienna. Pancreatic cancer. Jake's family promised to take care of him, to make sure he dies with dignity instead of drowning in medical debt. All I had to do was... She trails off. Marry Jake. Help destroy me. Help save the company, she corrects. The Morrison takeover isn't just about power, it's about survival. Townsend Corp is bleeding money. The merger rumours are keeping the stock price up, but once people realise the truth... My drink arrives. I take a long sip, letting the bourbon burn. And what is the truth? Jake's family. They're not just taking over Morrison. They're going to strip both companies for assets. Thousands will lose their jobs. She leans closer, including Paisley, Mia, everyone you tried to protect. Why tell me this now? Because I found something. She glances around before continuing. Evidence that Jake's family has done this before. Multiple times. They target companies, install their people, then destroy everything for profit. But if this evidence got into the right hands, like the SEC, like Andy Gibson, her eyes meet mine. I know you're working with him, but Vienna, he's not what you think. He's... The bar's door chimes. Lily goes pale. I turn to see Jake walking in, his face a mask of calculated calm. Well, isn't this cozy? He slides in between us, ordering scotch. My wife and my ex-wife, sharing secrets. Just catching up, I say smoothly. Reminiscing about old times. Old times. He smiles, but it doesn't reach his eyes. Like when you two would plot takeovers over cocktails, or more recent times, like Lily accessing confidential files she shouldn't have. Lily's hand trembles as she reaches for her drink. Jake catches her wrist, his grip visibly tight. The board meeting's been moved up, he continues conversationally. Tomorrow morning, and my family's very interested in knowing exactly what you two have been discussing. Let her go, Jake. My voice is steel. You've done enough damage. Damage? He laughs. I gave you everything, both of you. Power, position, purpose. And how do you repay me? By conspiring with Andy Gibson? We know about the other companies, Lily bursts out. What your family did to them. Of course you do. He releases her wrist. Why do you think I married you? Your father's position was valuable, but your predictable moral outrage, priceless. You bastard, I whisper. No, Vienna. I'm a businessman. And tomorrow, when the board approves the Morrison acquisition, you'll both understand exactly what that means. He stands, straightening his tie. Oh, and don't bother calling Andy. He's been well compensated for his cooperation. After he leaves, Lily and I sit in stunned silence. He knew, she finally says. He knew everything. We played right into his hands. My mind races. If Andy's compromised, our entire plan is blown. The board meeting's in 12 hours, thousands of jobs hang in the balance. My phone buzzes, Rhea. Heard about Andy? Don't panic. Remember what I said about insurance policies? Then another text from Paisley. Got your message. Singapore transfer declined. Ready to help however needed. And finally, Valerie. Emergency meeting in my apartment. Now, bringing reinforcements. I look at Lily, seeing not the woman who betrayed me, but the friend who tried to warn me, who's still trying to make things right. Jake's right about one thing, I tell her. We were good at plotting takeovers together. What are you saying? I'm saying we have 12 hours to save everything we built, but this time we do it our way. I stand holding out my hand. You in? She stares at my offered hand, tears in her eyes. Why would you trust me after everything? Because you're not the only one who knows how to plan for betrayal. I smile grimly. And Jake's about to learn what happens when he underestimates both of us. She takes my hand, gripping it tight. Where do we start? With the truth. All of it. And then we show Jake what real businesswomen can do. Valerie's apartment buzzes with tense energy at midnight. Laptops glow, papers scatter across every surface, and 5 women who should be enemies sit planning revolution. The board meets in 8 hours, Valerie says, refilling coffee cups. Run it down again. I stand before our makeshift war room. Jake thinks he's got us cornered. He doesn't know about Paisley documenting every suspicious transaction for the past 6 months. Paisley looks up from her laptop. Or about Mia copying the internal communications before they could be deleted. Or about me, Rhea adds, sprawled on the couch. The thing about being the crazy sister is nobody watches what you access. She grins. Their security system really should be updated. Lily paces by the window. But it's not enough. Jake's family has the board in their pocket. They'll vote however he tells them. Unless... Valerie hesitates. Unless we can prove they've been compromised, that they're acting against shareholder interests. My phone buzzes. A text from Andy. Last chance. Walk away now. You don't want this fight. I show it to Rhea, who snorts. My brother always did underestimate women. He has no idea I've been building a case against him for years. Why? I ask. Because some of us remember what he did to his last partner. Her eyes darken. Some fights are personal. Lily stops pacing. Jake will destroy everyone in this room if we fail. He'll destroy thousands of people if we don't try, I counter, including your father. About that? She pulls out her phone, showing us an email. Dad's not as sick as Jake's family thinks. He's been gathering evidence too. He's ready to testify about their previous takeovers. Hope flickers, but something nags at me. It's too easy. Jake's too smart to leave this many loose ends. My phone rings. Unknown number. I answer on speaker. Hello, Vienna. Jake's voice fills the room. Having a nice little meeting. Ice floods my veins. Lily goes pale. How did you... find you? Please. You think I don't track my wife's phone? That I don't monitor Valerie's apartment? He chuckles. I must admit, I'm impressed. Getting everyone to work together, that's the Vienna I fell in love with. The one who could always see the bigger picture. What do you want? To offer you a choice. In my hand, I have 2 press releases. One announces your appointment as CEO of Morrison Industries after the takeover. Very generous compensation package. The other, well, let's just say it details some unfortunate financial irregularities during your tenure as CSO. My hands shake. You're bluffing. Am I? Check your email. The documents appear in my inbox. The evidence is manufactured but convincing. Dates, transactions, signatures, all perfect forgeries that would take months to disprove. You have 1 hour, Jake continues. Choose the CEO position and everyone in that room walks away clean. Choose to fight me and I destroy you all. Not just your careers, everything. The line goes dead. Silence descends. I feel everyone's eyes on me. He's scared, Rhea finally says. He wouldn't offer a deal if he wasn't. Or he's toying with us, Paisley counters, making us think we have a choice. Lily approaches me, her face torn. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. We all are. I stare at the email attachments. The CEO offer is everything I've worked for. Power, validation, revenge of a sort. Jake's family would have to accept me as an equal. But I think of the Jake I married, who taught me to see 3 moves ahead, who showed me that the obvious play is usually a trap. Mia, I say suddenly, the internal communications you copied, did they include Jake's personal email? She nods. Everything from the last year. Search for anything about his family's private trust, the one they used in previous takeovers. Her fingers fly across keys. Here, encrypted messages from 3 months ago, Oh God. She turns her laptop. The emails reveal the final piece. Jake's family never intended to honor any deals. The trust is empty. They've already moved the assets. They're going to take everything, I realize. The CEO position, the company's, all of it. They'll make me the face of the destruction while they disappear with the money. 1 hour, Valerie reminds me softly. I look around the room, at Lily's determination, Rhea's fierce grin, Paisley's quiet strength, Mia's youth, Valerie's loyalty, at everything we could lose and everything we could become. I pull out my phone and dial Jake's number. Decision time, he answers. Yes, I say, but not the one you're expecting. I hit speaker and nod to Rhea, who connects her laptop to Valerie's TV. Across the screen, financial records begin to scroll, but not ours. Jake's sharp intake of breath tells me he recognizes them. The real war starts now. The boardroom feels smaller than I remember. Maybe it's the crowd. Every seat filled, reporters lining the walls, all eyes fixed on the empty chair at the head of the table. Jake's chair. He's late, Lily whispers beside me. Her hands twist a pen nervously. He's never late. I check my phone. No messages from Rhea or Valerie, who are positioned in the security office with Mia, ready to stream our evidence to every screen in the building. Paisley sits across the table, her laptop open, watching the trading signals. The door bursts open. Jake strides in, followed by 3 men I recognize from his family's trust. His eyes lock onto mine, and for a moment I see a flicker of the man I loved, brilliant, determined, unstoppable. Then he smiles, and he's a stranger again. My apologies for the delay, he announces, but I have some concerning information to share before we vote. He nods to his assistant, who begins distributing folders. Evidence has come to light of serious financial misconduct. Actually, I stand, cutting him off. I have something to share first. Vienna, he warns. Don't do this. I pick up the remote. Did you really think I wouldn't keep copies of everything? That I wouldn't recognize your family's pattern? The screens behind me flicker to life. Financial records scroll past, not just from Townsend Corp, but from every company his family has destroyed. Wire transfers, shell companies, offshore accounts. The trust is empty, I continue. Has been for months. They've already moved the money, haven't they, Jake? Just like they did with the others. Murmurs ripple through the room. Jake's family members shift uncomfortably. These documents are clearly fabricated, Jake says smoothly. And, given Ms. Howard's recent termination, her credibility is... Oh, I'm not your only problem. I nod to Paisley, who hits a key on her laptop. The trading screens explode with activity. Share prices plummet as pre-scheduled news releases hit the wire. Detailed exposés from 3 major financial publications, all launching simultaneously. Your father taught you to see 3 moves ahead, I tell Jake, but he never taught you to watch your back. Jake's facade cracks. You have no idea what you're doing. The jobs you'll destroy. Like you destroyed those other companies? Lily stands. Like you plan to destroy my father's legacy? Everything I did was for this company. Jake slams his hand on the table. For our future. No. I walk toward him slowly. Everything you did was for power. The company was just collateral damage, like I was, like we all were. His family members are already edging toward the door, phones in hand. Jake sees them leaving and something breaks in his eyes. Wait, he calls. The vote has already happened. Paisley turns her screen, showing the emergency shareholder meeting results streaming in. While you were trying to threaten Vienna last night, we were contacting major stakeholders. Amazing how quickly they'll act when they see proof their investments are about to vanish. The boardroom doors open again. 2 SEC agents enter, followed by Rhea and Valerie. Mr. Townsend, one agent says, we need you to come with us. Jake looks around wildly, seeing no allies left. His gaze settles on me. I did love you, he says quietly. In the beginning. I know. My voice stays steady. That's what made it so easy to trust you, to ignore the signs. But love without respect isn't love at all. As the agents lead him out, I feel a hand slip into mine, Lily, tears streaming down her face. Your father? I ask. Safe. Already gave his statement to the SEC. She squeezes my hand. Thank you. For believing in me again. Paisley approaches with her laptop. Trading's stabilized. The board's approved emergency management changes. They want to talk to you. Us, I correct her. They want to talk to us. The reporters surge forward, questions flying. Through the chaos, I catch glimpses of my team. Valerie's proud smile, Mia's excited texting, Rhea's satisfied smirk. Women who chose truth over power, collaboration over destruction. My phone buzzes one last time. Andy. You win. Impressive work. Dinner sometime? I delete the message without responding. Some bridges are better left burned. The boardroom slowly empties, leaving just our core group. Sunrise streams through the windows, painting everything in new light. The same room where I once fought so hard for Jake's approval now feels like a launching pad instead of a battlefield. So, Paisley grins, ready to rebuild? I look around at these women who risked everything to fight for what's right, who showed me that true power comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down. Yes, I say. But this time we do it together. The morning sun paints the office windows gold as I pack the last of Jake's things into boxes. His degrees, his awards, the photo of us at our wedding. All carefully wrapped in newspaper-like artifacts from another life. A knock at the door. Still cleaning house? Rhea leans against the doorframe, eyebrow raised. Just finishing. I hold up the wedding photo. Want to help me burn these later? Actually, I have something better. She drops a file on my desk. Remember how I said some fights are personal? This is why. Inside are photos of a younger Rhea with Andy, working at their first investment firm. News clippings about their meteoric rise. Then court documents. A lawsuit Andy filed to force her out, using manufactured evidence of misconduct. Jake didn't create that playbook, she says quietly. He learned it from my brother. That's why you helped us. Partly, she grins. Also thought it was time someone showed these boys how it's really done. My phone buzzes. Lily requesting a video call. When I answer, she's standing in what looks like a hospital room. Say hi to someone. She turns the camera to show her father in bed, looking tired but very much alive. The treatment's working, she says. Real treatment, not Jake's false promises. Dad's going to testify against Andy next week. Good, I smile. How's the Morrison merger going? Smoothly, now that we're doing it legitimately. Their board actually seems to trust us. She pauses. I never thought we'd be here, working together again. Neither did I. I look at the wedding photo still in my hand. Funny how betrayal can lead to truth. After we hang up, Valerie appears with coffee and a stack of reports. Paisley's team found 3 more shell companies, and Mia's developed a tracking system for suspicious transactions. Already? It's only been 2 days. She said you taught her to work fast. Valerie sits. Speaking of which, the board wants your decision by tomorrow. The CEO offer. Not Jake's fake version, but a real one, earned through merit and integrity. I'm not taking it, I say. What? I'm recommending you and Lily as co-CEOs. I hand her the proposal I've been drafting. The company needs leaders who understand both innovation and ethics, who know how to build, not just acquire. But after everything you went through to get here, I didn't go through it to get here. I went through it to learn who I am. I start unpacking my own box, not of endings, but beginnings. My red notebook, the Morrison deal documents, the photo of our team celebrating after the board meeting. And who is that? Rhea asks softly. Before I can answer, Paisley bursts in. They found him. Jake's trying to make a deal with prosecutors. Let him. I place the wedding photo in the box of his things. Some prices aren't worth paying. You're really ready to walk away? Valerie asks. From all of it. I look around the office, at Rhea's fierce loyalty, Valerie's steady presence, Paisley's brilliant determination. Through the glass walls, I see Mia at her desk, already becoming the leader I once hoped to be. I'm not walking away, I say. I'm choosing something better. We're starting a new firm. Ethics-focused consulting, helping companies grow sustainably. No predatory takeovers, no hidden agendas. Rhea raises an eyebrow. If you're interested, all of you. I pull out the business plans I've been working on. It won't be easy. We'll be competing against Jake's whole network. Good. Paisley grabs the plans. I like a challenge. Count me in, Rhea grins. About time someone disrupted the boys' club. Valerie studies me. You knew you weren't taking the CEO job all along, didn't you? I knew I didn't want to sit in the castle I'd helped build with lies. I pick up Jake's box. Sometimes winning means walking away and building something true instead. Together we carry Jake's things to the lobby. I pause at the security desk, hand the box to the guard. Have these delivered to his lawyers, I say, then turn to my team. My real team. Ready? The morning sun streams through the revolving doors as we step outside. The city feels different now. Not a battlefield, but a canvas. Not a place to conquer, but a place to create. My phone buzzes one last time. Jake's number. I decline the call without hesitation. Some castles are meant to fall, and some queens are meant to build something better than thrones.